Microphone check 1 2 1 kick it.
Yeah.
Yo, good morning. He's still the same idiot he's always been. I love when he gets his eyes looking like that. That Adobe ass font default. I could have put it into higher quality. That would have been smarter. Oh well. Oh my god, so much better. What a little baby. He's our little baby. Ooh, good morning. No, that's for later. It's for later. That's still too loud, though. Oh, man. Sudden headache. Oh. Hope everybody had a good morning / evening, day, whatever.
Okay.
Today I do have a city council thing to go to at like around noonish, so I'll definitely have to like. I usually end up going to sleep by like 11 a.m.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna need to like not go super late, not into the 8 or 9 a.m.s like I have been, because oh god, I gotta take a nap or something before. You'd be smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I had some stuff on the. I pulled up some stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, tomorrow I have. I think at like 1:30 is the city council thing that we're addressing for Dumb Duke stuff.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to be there and to show support, and or do some couple of comics or something. And they're meeting up a little before, so.
Microphone check 1 2 1 kick it.
I was looking around for a bunch of different channels for stuff for Lybia. We don't have to jump into that right away. No, I just wanted the full playlist. That's how you do it. Got some quick ones. Here we go. This is a thing that I've sort of seen.
If you spend long enough on,
there's been different YouTube channels that I've noticed over the years, and then all of a sudden they make 1 or 2 videos that make me go, So this is called Your Favorite YouTube Channel is Probably Owned by Private Equity. And it seemed like a very new video, and it was very interesting title. So I'm curious to see what this is referring to. And it had Veritasium, Game Rant, Donut, Heatonist, I think. A few different channels that I don't recognize. Was that Dude Perfect? Yeah. Law and something, I think. That's the one everyone watched for like the trials. So I'm curious to see what this is all about.
on YouTube, there's now a very good chance that a substantial share of your watch time is going to channels partially or fully owned by private equity. Major firms operating in this space have raised billions of dollars collectively from companies like SoftBank, Amazon, Disney, Goldman Sachs, and Blackstone, and they are using that money to—
Oh, totally different thing, but I have switched out my shampoo for a different shampoo, I think. Wait, did I think I just forgot to shampoo my hair. Fuck.
To acquire YouTube channels as strategic.
That's why I was like, why is this so heavy?
According to my own analytics, where YouTube lets me see what my audience watches, some of these names should be familiar to you.
God damn it, I'm so stupid. I was just standing in the shower, like, just thinking back. I was like, okay, I used the washcloth and the soap, but I remember not wanting to use the other shampoo. I think I just didn't shampoo my hair. Fuck, I had to take another shower.
Task and Purpose, Veritasium, Donut Media, Simple History, Fern, Fireship, Economics Explained, Mentor, Pilot, Futurism, Astrum, The Drive, and History Hit have all publicly been acquired by private equity.
So Veritasium, every now and then there'll be an interesting video on them.
Outside of the nerd corner of YouTube, some of the biggest names in the space, including Cocomelon, Colin and Samir, The Theorist, and Dude Perfect,
Cocomelon,
have
no!
also all partially or completely been acquired. These are also only the acquisitions that we know about because they chose to be upfront with their audience. There's no law requiring these deals to be publicly disclosed, and as you'll soon see, there are some really good reasons why they might want to keep it quiet. So why is this a problem? It's easy to say that private equity is just inherently bad, and to be fair, it's had some problems.
No, it definitely is.
But that shouldn't be enough by itself. Instead, what you should know is why private equity firms have suddenly become so interested in YouTube channels, and what this will likely mean for the future of the content that you watch. Big YouTube channels are really just businesses in the entertainment industry. Even completely independent creators still need to cover their own living expenses, and creating content does cost money. Film equipment, software, location shoots, perhaps a hired video editor, it all adds up. A lot of medium-sized creators barely scrape by, paying themselves fairly modestly. And in the interest of transparency, even this channel, which now has over 70,000 subscribers, has lost money most months since I started it. Anyway, all of this can be fixed with scale. As creative brands grow, their revenue increases while their costs stay relatively stable. At a certain size, most of these channels can generate strong cash flows and predictable profits, which should make them desirable investable assets like any other business, right? Well, not exactly. These operations are incredibly risky, even by
this dude is
small
like
to
a
medium
weird
business standards. Most of them depend on a single platform for the majority of their revenue, and these platforms can ban, restrict, or moderate their content overnight, often with little to no explanation.
Typing fast, I sometimes I type, but like one hand will type faster than the other. So like I'll get TEH when I go to type the. So like my one hand goes to T and E before this one can do an H, and it's like, stupid right hand, go faster, you know.
SunnyV2 and about a dozen copycat channels have built their entire career on saying that the algorithm stopped recommending their content, because it genuinely happens so often. On top of that, most of these businesses depend on a single personality to host the content, even if there's a larger team working behind the scenes. Human beings, especially those that share their lives online, can get burnt out, get embroiled in controversies, or just fall out of favor with an audience that outgrows them.
That's smart.
Typically, the wealthy investors and lenders that give money to private equity firms for them to make their acquisitions would be scared away by these business fundamentals. But over the past 5 years, a few things have changed which kicked off the great buy-up. The first major change was that creators demonstrated their ability to scale their own brands to generate profits beyond sponsored segments, audience donations, and integrated platforms. Some of these brands have been very successful, others not so much. Even if Beast Burger and Prime Energy completely implode, they were a test case that showed that real brands can be launched through clowns on the internet. If that initial success could be paired with a private equity team that actually knew how to run a business, theoretically, then there would be some real money to be made. Another big push that's come from the fact that legacy media, which is large, centralized, rigid, and needs to be broadly appealing, is losing out to millions of individual creators who are flexible, can make content specifically targeted to particular audiences without worrying about tarnishing the reputation of a gigantic media company. These companies now have to fight for advertiser dollars, which are being split over more mediums than ever. Now, this trend is nothing new. Google has been the largest advertising platform in the world for more than a decade now. But another threat these legacy businesses are facing is the competition for talent. A lot of people would rather operate their own YouTube channel over working on something like an old-school TV show. Investors in these companies are worried about these threats, and they're putting pressure on company leadership to do something about it. One of the central focuses of Netflix's Q1 memo to their investors was reassurance that they are not having any problems finding advertisers, and they presented a better opportunity to creators to make their show through them rather than produce it independently. Other legacy companies have started taking a simpler approach. If you can't beat them, buy them. Even if the business case is not that strong, a company like Disney giving a few $1 million to a private equity firm that specializes in acquiring YouTube channels lets their executives say that they are prepared for the threat that new media presents. Appeasing shareholders is often a lot more important to senior management than making genuinely good business decisions, especially when an investment of a few $1 million is actually quite cheap. Before around 2020...
That's kind of a silly way to phrase it, but it's not entirely wrong. Because, yeah, I mean, what makes sense in the boardroom is to an incredibly insulated group of people to make it sound business, like, versus how useful it will be. Because there's so many, like, weird ventures that these companies go into that just don't make any sense from the word go, but they do it, and then it doesn't work out.
The old school media companies were still going about this in their own old school way. They would invest in traditional companies that just happen to have a new media digital first focus. Think of businesses like Vice, BuzzFeed, Mashable, and Vox. These brands would build their own IP and primarily rely on platforms like Facebook and YouTube to distribute it, but behind the scenes, they were still operated like traditional media companies, with a lot of staff, city offices, and all the expenses that come with them. Which meant these were terrible businesses. They would burn cash, and they were much more expensive to acquire in the first place. Vice Media was once valued at over $5.5 billion. That's an unreasonable valuation for an organization that primarily distributed through a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. These are pages that get similar monthly viewership to Atriox's daily clips channel. Now, clearly these are not the same thing, but one is obviously much cheaper to operate than the other, on top of being generally more advertiser-friendly. The channel Modern MBA did a deep dive into these companies and their respective failures. He did a better job than I could ever do, so instead of retreading the same details, I'll just leave a link to that video if you're interested in that comedy of errors. But the point is, the legacy media companies that wanted to protect themselves against a wave of social media by throwing money at it needed a new solution. Instead of investing in companies to build an online audience, they could just invest in private equity firms that would buy out people who already had an audience. And then there's the private equity industry itself. Over the past 20 years, the scale of private equity operations has increased from less than a measly $1 trillion to over $12 trillion today in America alone, according to Preqin, a data firm who are themselves owned by BlackRock. With this much money to manage, they've simply run out of normal businesses to acquire. New private equity managers who want to start their own funds are entering a very saturated market, and one of the best ways to differentiate themselves is to invest in businesses that nobody else understands. According to public releases, the biggest firms in the YouTube space have collectively raised about $2 billion and borrowed an additional $2 billion on top of that. So it's still quite a small part of the overall private equity market, but that's still more than enough money for it to become an increasingly large part of your home screen. Now, for the creators themselves, this is a perfectly understandable decision to make. Online fame can literally collapse at any second for any reason, so if they can sell part or all of their channel and secure that bag, I don't think anybody should begrudge them for doing it. But it will inevitably change their content slowly but surely over time. One of the things that made YouTube channels a viable investment in the first place was their low overheads. A team of 2 or 3 people with off-the-shelf equipment can produce content that would have taken a whole studio at legacy media companies. But when a channel is acquired by a private equity company, they become the overhead. The analysts, business development managers, strategists, and acquisition teams all need to be paid as well. This means that to maintain profitability, the channel needs to make more revenue, which means more videos, more questionable sponsorships, more products. The investors in these firms also want to see consistent and continuous growth, which means they need to play the YouTube game with low-risk videos that are guaranteed to do well with the algorithm, accompanied by hyper-optimized thumbnails. Ultimately, what this means for you is that the content you watch is going to become more generic and safe within the parameters of what will optimize retention.
Like the Coco Melon angle is like whatever, you know what I mean?
This also works with a private equity business strategy called rolling up, where multiple acquired channels will share management resources with one another. So if one thing works well for one channel, it'll be rolled out amongst all the channels in a portfolio. Now, independent YouTubers are absolutely guilty of this as well. I've personally spent many late nights making minor adjustments to my thumbnails to help my videos do just a little bit better. But without a bloated team that needs to be paid and investors that need to be kept happy, independent creators do have a little bit more leeway to take some creative risks from time to time. Rolling up and hyper-optimization is only going to accelerate a trend of every single piece of content on YouTube moving towards the same generic but effective formula. This is amplified by another problem that comes when the channel turns into an asset, which is that they typically want to move away from the focus on a single creator. For more than a decade, a channel like Veritasium has been focused on the host, Dr. Derek Muller. For a lot of regular viewers, Dr. Muller is Veritasium, but if you've been watching the channel recently, you'll notice that new hosts are slowly being introduced, so the whole operation isn't as singularly focused on one personality. The business case is that it cuts down on something called key man risk, which is where the entire operation depends on one single person to continue. Since Veritasium isn't actually Derek's business anymore, there's nothing to stop him restarting a new channel from scratch or just retiring, since presumably he made millions of dollars from the acquisition in the first place. For other channels, this has already happened. If you search "why I left blank" in the YouTube search bar, there are endless videos from former personalities behind big channels talking.
Yeah, I've heard about the people, or some people I watch enjoy car content, and I don't really care, but they talk about how Donut was a huge channel that then everybody kind of just left the channel, I guess, probably because of this shit. So, and I've seen this dude do different like OSENT, open source something Battlefield shit.
Talking about why they're suddenly showing up on a completely new channel. A common theme among most of them is that it wasn't their channel anymore. Most of these splits seem pretty amicable, often with the old channel commenting words of support under the video itself, but obviously this is still a real problem behind the scenes. After losing their host, a lot of these channels have suffered from reduced viewership, and people are far less likely to directly support channels through merch or paid memberships when they know it's really just a faceless investment firm on the other side of the transaction.
For good reason. Yeah.
As this industry matures, we're more likely to see more onerous, non-compete contracts from acquired channels and a continuation of a trend towards commercial.
Dude, there was a thing where they were going to try to like ban non-competes, but then they got held up by some judge or something.
Commercially viable, predictable, and safe content over the unique and creative content that made YouTube so compelling in the first place. Now, go and watch this video next to understand the real reason every sponsor you see on YouTube is kinda terrible.
That's an interesting... This video wasn't all that enlightening. It kind of just vaguely said the things that make the most sense with a bunch of B-roll going on. So I was like, I'm not entirely... I mean, like, the idea is interesting, but ultimately it's like it could be summed up in 15 seconds. You know what I mean? It's one of those like, give me some more interesting things to say. But I mean, I guess they're just trying to upload for the sake of uploading, and fuck, you know. This might be the one video we watch before we watch Lybia stuff, just because again, don't want to go too late. But there was, so this is Taylor Lorenz, a video, a person that we've watched, and sometimes they
care what these people were.
Videos go a little long, and sometimes they got good thoughts and, you know, bad thoughts, whatever. Not bad thoughts, but just not the same points that we come to. But overall, I have a pretty good trust, and this is on the story. So there was other channels that were going on and on. Not like in a, they were just talking a lot about how this story of those, what do you call it? The CEO cheating thing, and looking at the doxing campaign that goes around behind it, and what that means for society and all this other stuff. And it was an interesting discussion that Kara and I had when we were watching. I think it was Caroline Kwame got rated into, and she was talking about how it was a really big deal for her. And I was like, it's less of a big deal for me, but I'm curious to see where more of this comes into play. Just because I think it might be a weak spot for me, because I'm kind of like, who cares? Whatever, right? But that's not what everybody thinks. So I'm curious to see what journalist Taylor Lorenz has to say about it.
I don't care what these people were doing. Like, I don't want to defend them. But at the same time, I don't think that going to a concert means that anything you do there should be broadcast to whoever and then fair game for.
Like, we were literally talking about being photographed at a concert the other day. And like, this might help me pull back more privacy rights, whatever it is.
Anyone to research anything that they want to about you.
Last week, a couple featured on the Jumbotron during a Coldplay concert in Boston went viral in a video that I think really defines this dystopian era of the internet that we're currently living in.
Yeah. Oh, look at these two. All right, come on. You're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy.
The two people pictured in the video are Andy Byron, the CEO of an AI company called Astronomer, and the company's head of HR, Kristen Cabot, who are ostensibly having an affair. Over the weekend, Astronomer said that Byron was stepping down as a result of this video. But how did things get to this point? The clip initially blew up on TikTok after a concert goer named Grace uploaded it with the caption, quote, "Trouble in Paradise," but it soon went viral on every single social media app. It was at the top of Reddit, trended on Twitter, spread all over Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, and more. Within minutes of the video being posted, users rallied together to identify the couple in the video, using information from the company's website, Facebook and LinkedIn activity, and facial recognition tools. People online even found the CEO's wife on Facebook and bombarded her with messages until she changed her name. Other people scrambled to identify onlookers in the video. They speculated that a second woman in the video was another Astronomer employee from the accounting department. Astronomer has said that this is false and that the CEO and HR head were the only two employees at the concert. The viral moment quickly exploded into thousands of memes and variations of the video online. Pornhub reported a
Okay, that's kind of funny.
digit increase in searches for office affair and caught cheating. Meanwhile,
That's crazy. That's a crazy angle to take on it, but that's really funny.
misinformation ran wild with fabricated apology statements and phony Coldplay concert policy updates like banning kiss cams. All of this, however, is just the latest example of the surveillance entertainment economy, where, as one user posted, we all feel entitled to stalk, dox, and humiliate random strangers on a mass scale simply because they exist in public spaces. Facial recognition and crowdsourced social media investigations are now constantly being used on random people, while the technologies that are being normalized are increasingly leveraged by the police and feds against undocumented immigrants and marginalized groups. So today we're going to dig into the origins of the surveillance entertainment economy, how it started, why it began, how it evolved, and what we can all do about it. Jason Kebler is here to help break it all down. Jason, welcome to Power User.
Hey, good to be back.
Okay, Jason. So to start off, I want to take stock of the scale of all of this. I saw this guy, Andrew, at The Ringer post this really smart post where he said, quote, "Monocultural events used to be like the Cheers finale. Now they're when normal people get caught cheating, freak out on an airplane, or say something funny about jobs." And then journalist Julia Alexander responded, quote, "We used to share in the experience of content, and now we share content as an experience." I thought this was super spot on, but what I wanted to add is that the content we're increasingly experiencing together is doxing content. It's investigative content. It's the whole internet coming together to basically participate in this surveillance entertainment economy. And it seems like virality itself is increasingly intertwined with surveillance.
Yeah, it's become like social media crowdsourced research for sport where people try to figure out like who is in the video, and we can talk about how they do that. But then it's like, okay, where do they work? Who do they know? What has their employer said about this situation? What has their friends and family said about this situation? Where are their other social media profiles? Like in this case, the CEO's LinkedIn was immediately just like hammered with tons and tons of comments. He disabled comments, then he totally turned his LinkedIn private, for example. And it's like, we see that over and over and over again. And I guess before we get too deep in this conversation, I want to acknowledge that I saw this video and I laughed and I was like, wow, this is like really funny. And then I was like, but also this is bad. And I want to just like...
I'm trying to think back. So like when someone freaks out on an airplane, they're being a piece of shit, and then people point at them for being a piece of shit. And like the crime of being a piece of shit on an airplane should not be your entire world explodes, but you were being a piece of shit on an airplane. Like, it's just the fact that you were being a piece of shit on an airplane. I do think that the world will get better at working through these things. I'm trying to think. My mind was thinking of a few different examples of how when we first started seeing certain things, we didn't really know how to handle them. But now, after being exposed to it, we're a little bit better at it. Although I can't really. It's like one of those, like, I feel like there was a really good example for this. Even when I thought it, I was like, oh, there's definitely something that's like this. Some type of, I guess it could be something as simple as a snowstorm in Florida could happen due to climate change. The first one is going to catch everybody off guard. No one knows what they're doing, how to handle it, what to do. Everyone's going to panic and be, it's going to be bad. But then after like the 15th snowstorm, because climate change has changed our new normal, we learn how to deal with snow and ice and shoveling and, roofs that are poorly constructed and very flat. We need to have some pitching on them or keep the snow from piling up, or lots of little things that you wouldn't normally think about. Now you learn how to handle. There's a growing pain time. Not everyone learns as fast as others, but the whole point is, eventually you get there. So sometimes when people get found out for being an asshole on a plane, they get fired. Even though it's like, it wasn't like them being super racist. They were just being a Karen or something and being annoying because they were fed up and they were stressed and a bunch of other things. And then it wasn't like they needed to be completely cut out of the company or whatever, but it is the company's decision if they just don't want to work with somebody who's like that. But they're probably just, it's bad PR for us. Let's make a statement. Let's do this, whatever. And they're not really thinking about the actual thing, depending upon the role and who it is and what they're doing and blah, blah, blah. Because ultimately, CEOs are always just bullshit nobodies. They're just figureheads. They're just a pretty face to then stand up there and say the words that the board has told them to. That's my understanding of CEOs, at least. So if a CEO has got negative attention, they'll ride that attention for the sake of attention, and then they will ultimately jettison them for PR purposes and to keep their name in the cycle. And also, the CEO dating the head of HR is kind of like a weird thing in general, power dynamic. It's kind of fucked to have the CEO trying to date somebody from their company. It even could be legit or whatever, but it's just still kind of a weird thing. You know what I mean? But that's just an individual specifics taken out of the context, whatever, or not about the idea in general. So like, still I'm in the basis of, if you think your actions don't matter, now your actions, whatever they are more public. And if you think how you acted should be private, but you didn't think it was private to everybody else you did it in front of, maybe that's my privilege of being not an asshole. It's like, oh, well, you're not an asshole like everybody else. So you were over here acting like you could just not be an asshole all the time, and then you don't want it, blowing up your life. But I'm like, this could just be like one of those, like, if you got nothing to hide, what are you worried about? And I don't want that idea to bleed through all of my thoughts and commentary. Because I'm trying to think, like, is there anybody that's, air quote, innocent that's getting blasted by these type of stories? And also, the Hawk Tuah girl wasn't doxxed or whatever, but they talk about the blowjob thing being a cultural moment. That we all remember that podcast episode, that weird clip that went viral. I was talking to Kara when we were having a discussion about this, and I brought up the Bean Dad thing, because like Bean Dad was very, very proud of being Bean Dad and making their kid go hungry for 6 hours because he wanted her to, from start to finish, figure out how to open a can, use a can opener she's never even seen used in a certain way before, and she's trying, and the dad doesn't want to teach her, and he bragged about it on a long thread, and everyone made fun of him. You know, if Bean Dad gets doxxed or whatever, I guess that's bad. But I do think that the world's getting better at learning about how to handle Twitter person of the day, or it's still a long process, I guess. But so this is a world where a white woman calling the child the N-word raises that asshole is a very loose term. I mean, honestly, it almost worked out good for her, right? Because she made fucking $1 million or whatever. Which is like, it shouldn't work that way. Like, I think it should work as a bad thing. I think if you're willing to call a kid the N-word, your coworkers should know that, because you do that to humans. You hiding that from your coworkers is kind of like you're being, you know, you're being a spy. But the world is unjustified, and not having an employment is losing your health care and then losing your rent and being homeless. So it's like putting a gun to your head. So then I'm like, I don't like the death penalty. So then I'm saying potentially you should lose your job over just, you know, being a jerk. And true, it doesn't always work the same way. I guess another part of it, just thinking about it, is the genie in the bottle. You know, it's like, I don't think there's a way to fix this, because a lot of the times it's some stupid social media account that posts the kiss cam joke like they do all the time, but it just caught wind. So even the initial poster is basically a nobody. Or like the Hawk Tuah girl was some random on the street interview podcast show thing that there's 100,000 of them. They all have no motion, but one just randomly got lucky, you know? So like, you know, the idea that you always blur faces when you are posting something, it wouldn't happen on the individual level, and sometimes the individual level is what brings it to virality. So even if they're like regular media stuff does it, someone's an ass on an airplane, banned from the airplane. There doesn't need to be a mass doxing campaign to see justice. I mean, doxing is obviously a problem in general for a lot of reasons. And it's one of those things that, for the most part, the system works, because for the most part, you don't randomly have the ire of everybody. There are creators that end up putting themselves out there, so then they get doxxed and harassed. Apparently, it's a big deal for streamers of all different sizes. It's one of the things that I've need to work on more, just on the back end, to make sure, in case I do get bigger, I wouldn't want to be at threat for some random freak or whatever. So like, even police stations, obviously police suck for a lot of reasons, but even when they're told, listen, like, people are going to try doing swatting to me or whatever it is, they're bad at handling that. I would hope that as the years go on, and creators and people who have these concerns are existing in more and more places across the country, that they'll be better at fixing it. Yeah, I mean, suicide is a problem in our society for a lot of reasons. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. There's a, because it's like, so the genie, you can't get the genie back in the bottle because internet exists, social media exists, cameras and phones exist. And also, it's a thing that happens in these scenarios where it's like the CEO effect thing, that it happens so rarely. It does happen, but there's like 3 or 4 a year at most out of, at least in America, 330 million people and growing. It's hard to think of a thing that you could do. I agree it's bad, but I'm trying to think of a way that you could realistically stop it. Because like I can look at this and go, I would be normal and I wouldn't care other than right? But the entire ecosystem has the crazy freaks. I guess a version of it would be these data collection websites. Perhaps there's some regulations in Europe for privacy protection that could be implemented here to help prevent the prevalence of these things. But like reverse Google image searching the CEO's face in a screenshot, someone's going to be able to do that. And if they happen to get a ping on the company's website, I don't know how you stop that. You know what I mean? The law alone acts as a barrier, not to mention it would take the same enforcement methods we use to enforce anti-child porn laws. The structure is there. Interesting. Sometimes with the enforcement rules, I don't see that as the best solution, although I'm sure it would move the needle to somewhat, which is perhaps the whole goal, is to make it something better. Because obviously people still do child porn, even though there's many rules against it, and it's one of the most like hated things of all time. So doesn't mean it's going to solve it entirely, but it could make people go, I wouldn't want to do that kind of thing. I think like people searching websites probably shouldn't exist. The whole background check bullshit is always kind of like a fucked up system. Even like businesses that do background checks on you, it's kind of whatever, I think some of that stuff should get shut down and be like not as chill. If you decided to make all those websites illegal, do they all just go to a .ru and just change their server location? And do they still try to do their bullshit? I don't know. Like when I was trying to look up, so the DSA, we had the thing where North County, the north side of like this entire St. Pete area thing, wanted to set up its own little mini chapter of DSA because we had the problem in this sort of like Tampa Bay area that were atomized into many different small municipalities. And they wanted to set up some people who could focus on this sector because most people in the traditional St. Pete DSA are all in the traditional St. Pete. And they were like, okay, look, we should look at all the different areas around us that we could potentially, focus on mayors and city councilors, et cetera, et cetera. And we were all tasked with looking up all these different ones. And there's all these different people who are all, publicly elected officials. But it was difficult for me to even figure out who was who, what party affiliation they have, all these different things. And I was trying to like just Google some names or whatever just to get some basics. And I would get fed all these fucking people searching sites. It looks sketch as fuck. And they all want you to pay money and stuff. There would be a lot less child porn in the world. The CIA didn't exist, but that's a different topic. That's true. People still murder people. We give up on trying to enforce those laws too. It's a hard reduction. It's not a complicated education. It's not a complicated equation. Smaller number equals good. Sure, but I mean, like when I hear people, so I guess to reference what I was referring to, and not to think that the idea of making it bad to do bad things, obviously, but like people say like we need harsher laws, we need harsher prison sentences, and I'm like, America already has the harshest laws and the harshest prison sentences, especially for black and brown people. So do they think that like if they think that actually equates to better behaved air quote citizens, then we should have the best behaved citizens? But we still have crime, and the reason we have crime is material conditions, but they don't like to see that. And they want to say, no, 3 strikes, you're out. 2 strikes, you're out. 1 strike and you're out. I don't give a fuck. They want harsher crimes, longer sentences, more death penalty. But it's like, we already have the worst prisons basically in the first world. You know what I mean? So it's like, why doesn't that work? You already have that. So that's kind of where I was coming from, that negative reinforcement doesn't always solve the problem. But we're not there yet. We don't have the harshest rules for public information and doxing laws, right? So we're not at that point. So maybe my reasoning was not founded because I'm basing it on one version, which is more extreme than our current version, which is very lax. And having some form of, because like if it's not illegal to do something, people will do it because they just don't really think about it. But if you make it just like, hey, it's against the law, then that begins the moral calculus in a person's head. Like, oh, wait, I'm being told now this is a default bad. And then people always figure out in their own head later on, like, okay, how does that work? What is it? You know, but it's not a bad thing. And I mean, that's why I was interested in thinking about it as the, no. Well, I thought we would have some amount of laws, but I guess we just don't even have laws at all. But I was just saying, like, the idea of punishment and enforcement isn't one that I try to jump to because I'm so used to coming from it from that angle. But knowing we have no laws at all, and also thinking that there's other laws that are similar to this, we could just move over and employ it, and it would definitely be a deterrence for a certain percentage, which would help. And also Europe probably has much better regulations on top of enforcements. So like regulations would be like these websites can't exist or they're not allowed to get these things out. Those would be things that would stop a big brunt of it, right? You're reducing the funnel. So that still could be the one or two freaks that can really dive deep and, you know, hack or whatever, but that's going to be a much smaller number, which is going to do less damage overall. So that makes sense. You know, I'm just trying to think it out in my own head. I'm imperfect, but I'm happy to think about this more. You know, this was the whole reason why when I saw this being covered from this angle, I was like, I don't know that I had the best answer, but I knew what I felt. But unfortunately, I have like my body and my brain, because of my upbringing and or because of my lack of education in certain things, I feel like I always just pick the wrong thing. You know, I just always gut reaction pick something wrong. At least so far, I've been decent at understanding that I need to like double check things with myself. But and I try to think about things in the most empathetic way possible. And sometimes that leads me to being like, we should not have any enforcements because that's empathetic in this other way. But wait, that's going a bit too far in a certain way. And like, I got to like think about it. Yeah. They're lax for most things. Comes with several decades. Interesting. I mean, I know our white fucking collar crime is goddamn lax. That's for sure.
Acknowledge, like, we can hold two different thoughts in our head at the same time. Yes, I laughed. Yes, it's hypocritical, but I also think it's bad. And we can talk about why I think like this impulse is bad. This let's dox someone immediately. Let's find out everything about their lives immediately. And I think that this is a high profile incident.
Yeah, I mean, and also like isn't like a civil offense or like a traffic ticket is not necessarily illegal, but it's a citation or something like that, because that's what people were saying about crossing the border. Like it's not illegal. It's just like, it's not a punishable crime. It's just like a fine or something. Like I forget the term for what the two different types were, but there was basically saying that it's a civil offense. It's not even a criminal offense or something like that.
That is emblematic of things that happen to people who are not famous, who are not rich, who are not powerful, who are not CEOs all the time.
When do you think that this sort of...
Not to completely open up a whole different side problem, but I've hated how traffic tickets, a complete tangent, I guess, but just like a quick little misnomer that we can eventually talk about more later on or a different day. But traffic tickets, driving fast is dangerous. Not, it's against the rules, law, whatever. It's bad. So you get charged with a traffic ticket and you got to pay a fine. And then you also get points on your license, et cetera, et cetera. But the fines are very static. There's very specific prices for doing certain speeds in certain areas. And then there's certain fees built into it. But those fixed prices do what? They literally do nothing to stop the rich, and then they only incredibly oppress the poor. So like, should it be a percentage base but also stealing 1% of anyone's income would be brutal. And then also some people, you know, don't get their money through income, so you couldn't even say it's like a paycheck thing, and some paychecks are like freelance and come through in different ways. Some can't even, like, you know, is it like a tax thing that you levy later on to like give them less tax benefits or something? I'm just trying to think of like, how could you create a financial punishment for something and have it be equitable without it being incredibly complicated and hard? And I could never think of a way that, because like the rich people hire a lawyer to show up in court for them to get the points off, so it doesn't even cost points, and then they just pay money. And it's like, you know, it's like me taking the fucking toll road. Oh, it cost me $1 something? Who cares? It's going to save me some time. Nice. A rich person speeds, doesn't give a fuck, and then gets a ticket or something, or runs a red light camera and gets a fucking red light camera citation, and they can just pay it off. They don't give a fuck. Where a poor person would be almost like they'd like to decide between, like, you know, buying their medicine or paying the bill. Blew up 20 coal miners and he got 3 years house arrest. Yeah. I mean, he's got a really weird name. Steven Donziger, the lawyer who rightfully fought against Chevron for killing brown people in another country. Literally nobody in the world, no actual human being in the world, can see what Steven Donziger did. Literally followed the rules, did law, took people to court to fight back against injustices, using the systems and the institutions in place. And what do? They put him in jail. They jail him permanently for just having the audacity for trying to fight back. He's done interviews. He's been on fucking, you know, CNN, documentaries about it. Doesn't matter. He's like, I think he's gotten on house arrest for a little bit and has to go back in. It's just like the rich and powerful can do so much and get away with it, that it, all those like petty problems of people really should just like be like, wait a minute, this is the real problem. I'm trying to figure out exactly. Counter litigation. They started that as seen in a documentary presented at the Sundance showed scientists present at a legal strategy meeting. The same scientists were later appointed by something Ecuadorian court. Compromising scenes are left out of the film. Whatever. It's nobody has said that the persecution of him was like justified or whatever, and the fact that he could be under such intense. I mean, I can pull up something on this later if we find it interesting, but it's just one of those things that, like, you know, just thinking about those problems makes me think, like, why am I watching this video? You know, we're you know, obviously getting annoyed and attacking random individuals, but it's like as I said, like a 3 times a year at most problem compared to bigger fish to fry. A literal goddamn genocide is happening, you know what I mean? Like, but it's an interesting topic to make me think about things, and it can also help me understand and be empathetic in other ways. And also, it was something that I was weak on earlier, or just I did not have a full-fledged complete thought on it, so I kind of wanted to
Crowdsourced surveillance culture, for lack of a better word, really started to emerge.
It may have been before this, but in my mind, when this started happening was the Boston Marathon bombing. Like, in the immediate aftermath of that, there was some surveillance footage, there was some social media footage of the finish line where the
Okay, I remember this, and then they were trying to find the bombers, and they started doxing people who had nothing to do with it, and then they caused those people problems who were complete innocents. So that's a good example of this being used to, even if I decided that being a Karen or a bad person means that air quotes you deserve it, which is not what I think, but even if I did think that way, this is a good example of the apparatus being used ineffectively, or I guess like true crime people doing like personal research into true crime and trying to solve an ongoing mystery, and then start creating a bunch of like whipping up a bunch of freaks to then harass people who have nothing to do with it, and or impeding with the actual necessary investigation, because the way the law system works, that can really fuck up the way that the courts will work or evidence is collected, etc.
The bombing happened, and this is a terrorist attack. It was something really awful, but there was a subreddit that was trying to figure out who the different people were in these clips, and nominally they were trying to figure out who the bomber was.
I mean, like, and that doesn't even seem like a bad goal. Like, if right-wing freaks came to a Palestine protest and did damage or hurt or even killed people, and there's videotape footage of it, I could see many leftists or anarchists or just people who want justice in general. And also people know that like the cops are bad at their jobs, right? Literally Luigi Mangione, the person who was alleged of doing the crime, who, I mean, people, they're innocent until proven guilty. Sometimes heads just do that. Sometimes bodies just fall over and pop like that. It wasn't found through the cops. It was found through regular people, right? So there's always this like, especially if it's something that's near and dear to your heart, close to you, I could see people wanting to look into it. But then whipping people into a fervor, it's one of those things where this might be one of those examples of that was the early days of this combined tool was not really understood. I wonder if a similar example happened, if people would be cooler heads about it today. Probably not. But what about 20 years from now? But maybe with the rules that we're talking about and or some of the restrictions, we would have. It was Waluigi. Yeah, obviously, that's the evil Luigi, because is it his mustache is what, even more Italian? I don't even know. Yeah. I wonder if it could still be done, but done with a bit more ethics, where like instead of doxing completely innocent people, trying to track down a right-wing bad person. I'm just phrasing things in a way that would be in a thing that I would think I could see people being polarized, or not polarized, but just like encouraged to try to, because like that would be a tragedy, and it would like these are all tragedies, but I could see people that I would consider on my side going for it, but then also ultimately committing this crime.
And there was this frenzy of people trying to figure out like who are the people in these videos, and they ultimately identified a person, and it was the wrong person, and that person died by suicide like immediately after this. And it was a really, really horrible situation and event. But that is like the first kind of like mass who is this person moment that I can remember. Is there anything before?
Social lynchings want to destroy the lives of people they hate and will stop at nothing to achieve that goal, regardless of political affiliation involved. True. I guess I was just framing it from a political affiliation that seems more justified, to make it where like I would want to instinctively defend it, right? That's kind of what I was doing as like it's a bit of an exercise in like, if I'm like, ew, right wingers, libs of TikTok going crazy trying to hurt a teacher, right? That's a great example of this being used in a negative way. I would never want that to exist. But in an example where, some guy in their truck mows down a bunch of protesters doing their legal right, I would want that, I would have angry justice in my heart. But in other parts of my ethics, I don't see that as a justified reason to have negatives. Again, one of the reasons why I believe in no death penalty is, even if it's Hitler or whatever, there's times when the person judged will be a person who has no way to fight back and is maligned. And it's one of those, I would rather 100 guilty men go free than one innocent man go to jail. So this is a situation where, even though it could be good to have these tools, to have things that align with my ideology or political team fighting, that would be going against my other ethics of, I would rather let people go free than have one innocent person get hurt. And this would be a case where I should continue that, because if I have empathy for that, I should have empathy for this, because this has similar stakes. People take their own lives or have a large portion of their lives ruined, especially in a world where your material conditions are so important because you're not provided them in other ways. So this is helping me build the framework for, because like as we know from before, there are certain things that help my brain work with something. And if I don't work with something, I continue to have friction. But if I can make it fit, then it's so much easier for my head to really just completely gel with it, where now it's my new autopilot, if you will. You don't do bandages. We don't stop the system till it's fixed. Yeah, that's, I mean, 100%. I mean, yeah. And well, I guess for my own personal journey, the metaphor will be me just constantly putting bandages all over my body, because I'm always trying to get better. And I don't ever think I will be air quote fixed, but I get what you're saying. But I guess I am just a constant bandaging kind of guy. But maybe I should be internal surgery to, reinforce with pins or something, something else more clear cut. But I get what you're saying.
For that you can think of.
Or I think I get what you're saying.
It's so funny. I remember I worked at the Daily Mail at the time, and I remember being in the Daily Mail newsroom and everyone just scouring the internet to try to find any information on this person. And like you said, it was really this Reddit community that had come together, but it was also happening across Twitter, which at that time was very like news driven. But it was the first time also that I think we started to sort of realize how much was being shared online.
Yeah,
I mean,
fair. Sorry, yeah. Sometimes when I have a thought in my head, especially with me, I try to make sure I finish it, and then I'll see messages pop up because I see the chat move. But I'm like, if I stop and read it, then I'll lose my thread. So yeah.
April 2013, for people who don't remember. By that time, social media was around. It was nascent. Instagram had only launched 3 years before, and you couldn't really search on it. Twitter was really like the main thing,
so
I
think she's kind of getting at it, where this is kind of the early ages of it, but she might continue the story to say, even though it's been started, it still hasn't gotten safer, or we as a society still aren't ready to use this yet. So that's again where laws, regulations, guide rails, limitations should be put up.
So digging through Facebook. Facebook was not even a decade old at that point, but people had been sharing so much. And I remember people sort of scrolling through, looking. You could search for people in Boston. You could try to see who was friends with someone, and sort of like trying to look at people's tagged photos to suss it all out. And I just remember at that time too, just thinking about my own digital presence and being like, wow, there's a lot more that we can find out about people online than I think.
Thankfully, I got no friends, and I never get taken, and I don't use social media because I don't have that itch to scratch. My head ends up just like watching videos and playing video games. So lucky me, I don't really have this weird background history, but also I kind of wish I had more social connections, because then I would be better at streaming and sharing videos. All good. Yeah.
A lot of us might have initially realized.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of high profile incidents like this. I think the most common is kind of immediately after a mass shooting or a really awful terrorist attack, where people do try to find any trace about the shooter. And that often means trying to track down their Facebook friends, trying to find their Instagram, trying to find their YouTube. But it also means
people had Luigi's, a bunch of photos of him, this alleged what I think as my individual citizen who has not seen the case files, a totally innocent individual. They track down his vacation photos. They track down his like book reviews on certain things, high school speeches, all kinds of stuff. They were able to find a lot. I mean, I guess when the entire microscope of the world is turned on you, once the name is out, then whatever is naturally lost in the entire pool of everything, then it'll all be found when all of a sudden it's relevant, because someone who's completely non-relevant has lots of posts, lots of things, lots of presence, lots of, but when millions of people, maybe that's an exaggeration, care and are trying to look, they will all eventually find that needle here and there, even if they only spend 5 minutes apiece.
Means like figuring out what like usernames they may have used on Xbox Live or like some random forum or something like that, and then sort of working back from there. And I also have had that same realization about myself where, I don't think I've done anything awful, but it does make you wonder, like, what is my digital footprint? And so like I've searched all of the like usernames that I've ever used on like any forum or like my old Zanga, like things like this, and I'm like, wow, there's like a lot here. It's become really common. I guess first journalists did it quite a lot and journalists still do it, but it's become this like broader thing where people start trying to research anyone who is part of any major news event.
So I think things started around the Boston bombing, and you had a lot of journalists and kind of like digital sleuths and like people who I think were deluding themselves into being like, oh, I'm a helpful citizen, I'm going to do my part and try to find this person. So that's April 2013. By December 2013, we have another moment that I think is closer to kind of what we're seeing with the CEO, which was the Justine Sacco tweet. I'm sure you remember this.
I do. Has Justine landed yet?
Yeah. So exactly. This woman, Justine Sacco, who at the time was this corporate executive, was on a trip to Africa. She had posted something incredibly offensive.
Oh my God. Justine Sacco, going to Africa, period. Hope I don't get AIDS, period. Just kidding, period. I'm white, exclamation point. Holy fuck. $2013.
It was like, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. Then she logged off and was on a flight for like 9 hours or whatever. And while she's on the flight, her tweet blows up. This ends up being this mass moment online when everyone sort of comes together around this hashtag, has Justine landed yet? And throughout those 9 hours, not only was it this like anticipation of like, wow, what's going to happen when she gets online and realizes that everyone's seen her bad tweet, but
which proves that to some degree, we have not gotten better at this like I maybe thought we would. Could be that we don't have enough time, only 10, 15 years, but how much time am I willing to let it go before people, while people get hurt? So,
but it was also like, let's dig up everything about her. Like now we have these 9 hours to sort of like collectively research everything about this woman who has done something bad. And I think we very quickly saw a lot of the tactics that were used around the Boston bombing just months before suddenly being used against this random lady.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I do remember being online that day. I worked at Vice at the time, and I just remember entire news cycles occurred while she was on this flight, where first it was like, here's the tweet. Then it's like, here's who this woman is. Then it's like, the internet is researching this woman. And you had like multiple phases of virality before she even landed. And I think, and I'm sure you felt this as well, but there was definitely a period on the internet where it's kind of like anything goes, because anything that was trending would get a lot of traffic. And so it was like a self-feeding frenzy, because Justine Sacco probably started trending on Google, and then she started trending on Facebook, and then you could really write like any headline and it would get traffic. And at that time, traffic was really
yeah, what's up? Just kind of doing a soft start to the day. I do have to I have a city council thing to do with the DSA for our public power thing. So that I have to like start leaving the place at like 11 or 12. So it's 3 now. So I won't go too late tonight. I won't make it until like 8 a.m. or whatever. I'll have to take a nap and shit. But just watching this thing about the doxing stuff because I was in Caroline Kwan's chat after a raid, and she was covering this CEO thing, but from the angle that it's bad that we as a society do this. And I had one of my classic, I don't quite see the problem in this. It's bad, but whatever. Very laissez-faire about it. But trying to build a better perspective for myself to see it as a more of an important thing. And one of the angles that I should have thought about it from was like with criminal justice, I would rather see 100 criminals go free versus one innocent go to jail. That's kind of a mantra, a simple little idiom, especially when it comes to death penalty and things. So there's lots of examples of this style of doxing and things being used in a way that innocents get hurt. So even though I don't care, people, an asshole on a plane, some lady calls somebody the N-word, whatever. But now at the same time, they can make $700,000 from GoFundMe's and not be punished, while a person of color who's just trying to get someone to calm down on an airplane gets doxxed and might commit suicide or something. So like, there's a lot of negatives, and even any negatives should be enough of a reason to find ways to in the system make it harder to do it. And also there could be things that work in other places, like the same way that I think housing works better in Red Vienna, and we should look into those models. I think that criminal justice works better in the Scandinavian countries, and we should look into those models. There might be great examples of how internet privacy and anti-doxing things are already implemented, and I should be, at the very least, in favor of them, if not constantly trying to get them in our areas. And I shouldn't just be like, whatever, they deserved it kind of thing, because that's not so much of the exact knee-jerk reaction, but it's essentially where it comes from. And feeling like I left that topic with not a well-rounded understanding. I saw that she had a video that she put out 20 hours ago, so I was like, I'll watch it.
Closely tied to like whether a story was important or whether people care.
And wouldn't you know it, Goat's been in the chat helping walk me through it as well. This is, unfortunately, I've been adopted by Goat to slowly get fixed for a lot of my unseen biases and problems. So, we're getting there bit by bit. One day I'll get a victory, and I'm sure
about it or not.
Yeah, exactly. We started to see this like clickbait culture emerging, and the SEO articles about like who is XYZ viral person that everyone's talking about online were popping up right at the same time that like digital news was also becoming a thing. So you had like Mashable, BuzzFeed. I worked at Mike.com. Like, they would just sort of like create this like viral chum around these previously totally unknown figures.
The other thing that was happening around this time, and that is still happening, was the rise of open source intelligence as like a hobby, but also a research tool. And so,
dude, like the open source intelligence. It seemed like some of the Trump administration was using OSINT Twitter stuff. Like they were like retweeting or retruthing OSINT accounts talking about like the bombing of the Iranian facilities. And it's like our government should not be utilizing these things as a tool. These are not like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, I guess some people said that it's plausible that maybe it was just them using this as like a fun thing and or not necessarily confirming something, but the fact that they're on their radar to that degree is like weird.
Open source intelligence is exactly what we have been discussing, where it's like you use information that is on the internet to research a news story or something like that. And so the methods for doing this started to get really sophisticated, where you had not just people like you and me who, like, I didn't have any specific.
Not to keep bringing up air quote good examples, but I was in Cinemarxism chat, and during some really bad ICE footage, people were talking about how, ICE agents wear masks to hide themselves. And in itself, them wearing a mask is a proof that they are afraid, and this will not be like this forever, and they don't want to have a history of them doing these negative things. But then sometimes their masks slip, and then people figure out who those people are. This is you indexing all your stuff. What the? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. A goat. I see. Okay. Very humble. I mean, I guess literally goat is in your name. That's our Philco video. I should take more videos of my kitties doing stuff. I can bust out my gimbal more often and do little slow-mo videos of my kitties. Be nice.
Hello, everyone.
No, not the 3D printed Power Fist. Although part 1 was printed last night. So far, so good. It'll be nice and big once it's done. I think it's somewhere around here is where like the hand goes. So we've got a couple of days of printing left. I'll keep you all updated for sure. The piece right now that's in there. Take it to a baseball game. It might explode if it tries to catch a baseball. Made some slight adjustments to things, and I have some silver PLA, so I figured some parts being built silver would just be nice. Yeah, Philco. So we printed this one yesterday, and we're printing this one now. If I go to the device, I can get a little snapshot of it. So it's got an hour and 15 minutes. Oh, you can't see. What am I doing? I'm sorry. An hour and 15 minutes left of the current print. Look at it go. This is now an old printer. It's no longer top of the line. I like the Bamboo Lab printer because it was very like baby's first printer. It auto levels. It auto does a bunch of shit. It has computers and LiDAR. Half of it's probably bullshit, but whatever. It made it way easier compared to like the really do-it-yourself style hobbyist ones that existed before. But anyway, not preview. Okay. Yeah, we printed this one plate yesterday. We're on this plate now. Some of these plates will print fast, but a lot of these big ones will take a while. But yeah, we're on 2. I did sleep for a while and had nothing printing, so that's going to add some time to the thing. Anyway, I'm just tabbing through my things.
Training in exactly like how to research someone. I was just someone who was like on the internet a lot and was good at clicking around social media and doing like advanced searches and things. But then you also had people who may have had like an intelligence background, who may have like formerly worked at the NSA or the FBI, who started using some of the things that they learned within the government.
Just because I want to make sure we can get to our stuff, I'm just gonna like 1.25 this.
To start researching things like the rise of ISIS and like doing things like looking at satellite imagery. And this was like really important work and can be really important. And it's been used to find like atrocities done by Israel. It's been used to find like hidden terrorist camps and things like this. But like these same tactics have filtered down to research like incredibly frivolous things.
Yeah. I mean, the ISIS accounts, like back in the early 2010s were such a real thing online. Like there was the James Foley beheading video like around this time as well. And I remember people like, you know, taking screenshots of the background and looking at it on Google Earth to try to sort of like determine where things are. All of that sort of like.
Dude, some of those Rainbolt clips, finding like an official meme from like forever ago. There's one I remember, like the little girl who's going, I guess she's like she's sitting there as the house is burning in the background. Like he'll find that exact spot through Google Earth. Now, you might not be able to do it to everything, but some of these people are crazy with Google Earth. Now, half of the things that they're crazy about with Google Earth is just metagaming Google Earth to understand how the cameras work, what kind of vehicles are used, sides of the road, where the sun is in the sky, but then down to like, oh, that type of dirt, that type of grass and tree combination is only going to be in, and they just build up this incredible index in their heads. And some of those people are in the Hasanabi circles. So watch out, you jerks out there. You never know. We got shooters on our side too, I guess is what I'm saying. And by shooters, I don't mean guns. Okay, let's be real. Okay.
Building. And then I think we start to see in the mid 2010s also just these viral characters emerge on the internet without their consent. Like a year later after the bombing, you see Alex from Target, who's just this random kid at Target that somebody takes this photo of and posts it on Twitter and goes viral on Snapchat. And I think of Ken Bone actually throughout the 2016 election. Like he was a guy who kind of went viral for being this like undecided voter on TV, but very quickly everybody looked up.
He liked Jennifer, the lady from Hunger Games' butthole. Okay. Right.
Everything about him and found his Reddit history, and the discourse around him immediately became around like sort of his online presence.
This is probably around the time the phrase milkshake duck
Oh, it was the fappening. That's what he was commenting on the fappening.
Took off. I don't know the exact timeline of that or even the exact origin of that, but it's a meme where someone goes viral for whatever reason. It's almost always a random person. And often the reason that they're going viral is because they did something cool. Like it's like, oh, I'll look at this like thing or person that you really like. And then people do like tons of research about them. And they're like, oh, we regret to inform you that this person said something really racist, like somewhere, or like anything like that. It's like, we regret to inform you, we found something bad that this person did online.
Yeah, Milkshake Duck actually also comes in 2016. It's right around the Ken Bone time. And it's from this really famous tweet from this account, Pixelated Boat, that was sort of like an internet poster. And it's from this viral tweet when he said, the whole internet loves Milkshake Duck, a lovely duck that drinks milkshakes. 5 seconds later, we regret to inform you the duck is racist. It's this idea of like, we all have this viral guy. Actually, they're problematic. I think we really started to see it accelerate actually after Trump was elected. You started to see.
I haven't heard the term milkshake duck used in a while. I've heard the pancake waffles thing where not really the same topic, but you say, man, I really love pancakes. And then people reply, how dare you? Why do you hate waffles so much or something? Which is different, but somewhat similar.
A lot of people that had this like justifiable outrage over the Trump presidency and sort of looking up other people and being like, well, you participated in this. You said something racist back in XYZ. You did this. And that really accelerated with actually the beginning of these like Karen videos in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I can't name the names of all of these people, but there were so many people who were like, who would get a high profile job or something like that. And then you had primarily, I feel like right-wing podcast personalities like research their old tweets and find something that was either hypocritical or racist or bad. And then that person would like get their job offer rescinded or something like that. And then, yeah, the rise of sort of Karen videos where people would film these like often really horrific and often pretty like racist interactions where, you know, someone was acting crazy on a plane or was calling the cops on someone delivering a pizza, like things like this. And then the internet would start researching like, who is this?
Black man fishes in the lake where people allow to fish. And they go, hey boy, you allowed to be out here? What are you doing out here, boy? Calling the cops on them. And it's like, I think there was an account where it was like, I'm out here fishing every day to see how many of my neighbors come out to try to get me arrested for fishing in my own neighborhood or something like that. Something crazy. And I remember watching it a few times being like, I'm losing faith in humanity. And the more I watch it.
This woman, and let's tell her employer about it.
Yeah. There was the barbecue Becky video. There was also Permit Patty. You also started to see the opposite.
Like, show me your address. Show me your ID. Like, I don't have to do that, dude. Like, I live here. Fuck you. And they're like, no, I don't believe you live here. What house? And it's like, fuck you. I live here. You know, it's like, God.
So I think this was also when people were looking into like white supremacists and around Charlottesville and then these protests after, I think people were like, who is the secret Nazi? Like who has done bad things? Like who are some of these big white supremacist figures online? In 2019, there was a bunch of scrutiny around the March for Our Lives kids, and Kyle Koshov had his admissions revoked from Harvard, I believe it was. He was a Parkland survivor who had posted a bunch of racist comments in the past. And that was the same year you also had the Covington kid, where there was this kid who was featured in this viral video, sort of smugly looking at, you know, Native Americans. And there was all these sort of like implications that the media put behind it. But there was this like rush to.
You know what's crazy is all the right wingers in this situation get hugged and filled with cash, and all the left wingers get fucking, you know, left bleeding in a ditch. Like the fucking married couple that came out with their little guns, like the mom or the lady with like the pistol who held it the most unnatural way possible to hold the pistol, and then the fucking little accountant looking dad, you know, with his little square haircut and square glasses with the AR-15, and he, you know, it looks like he's like 5'2". But then those guys end up at the fucking, you know, RNC the next cycle. It's crazy.
Look up everybody's like complete online history and sort of determine like, are you like a good or bad person?
There's just so much fucking like golden parachutes and money injected into the right wing side of things. It's so fucked that it's like that. Pisses me off. Because everything is just, in every small interaction, everything is just leaned to help the right and to hurt the left. Even in the most innocuous bullshit things.
Around this time was when a lot of the sort of, I would say like technological advances started to happen. Like I remember around that time, there was a tool that could recognize white supremacist and Nazi tattoos. And so like a lot of people would have masks on at these, you know, Nazi rallies, like actual Nazi rallies. And there was like computer vision tools, sort of rudimentary ones being released that would allow you to determine based on a tattoo, like what that tattoo was. And then from there, people could start sort of researching whether they could find other photos of that tattoo in someone's social media or something like that. And so this is like really around the time when things started getting more than just like, oh, I'm really good at Googling. It's like, oh, I'm getting like good at sort of using these technological tools to do some of this research for me.
And Twitter seemed to...
If only we used it for when we were, you know, picking who's going to be the Attorney General of the United States. If only we... Not Attorney General, sorry. The fucking commander of all of our armed forces. Whatever the fuck that job is. Defense Secretary, whatever the fuck it is. You know, if only we use this for the cabinet. You know what I mean? Like somebody with an Iron Cross tattoo on their entire pectoral, maybe, you know, shouldn't be. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe we should use like the Assassin's Creed, you know, Valhalla sync animation on them or something instead. You know, what the fuck, right?
To be like the nexus of a lot of this. And I think even actually into 2020, because 2020 we had Amy Cooper, the Central Park Karen, who was also involved in a viral video when she sort of got...
There's a lot of weird ones. Oh. This is not helpful, my Google search. So there's these things. Imperial Knights. They are a miniature that's pretty tall. So like if a regular mini is this tall, the knight would be like this tall. It's a big robot. And at one point, you know, very fancy, first time big robots kind of made their comeback into the game. You know, you got little orcs and you got, you know, little guys and big robots next to them, whatever. And then when Knights came out, they're very big models. They're hard to paint. And one gaming club can't. What the fuck? Oh, this is not what I thought it was. There was some post that they made with a some group of people who were kind of right-wing coded. They were trying to, you know, advertise and or sell, you know, a knight that they had, and it was painted, but it had one of those Nazi skulls on it. It's something like these things. And like, it's one of those things that like, if you don't know what it is, the game is full of skulls. The game is 40K. It's literally like every piece of ground is nothing but like a million skulls under the ground. But this was painted very clearly on like a giant banner or whatever on the model. And people were like, yo, that's a Nazi thing. Yo, whoever painted this, painted a Nazi thing on this. Make sure that guy's not a Nazi. Because, you know, it's possible somebody Googled skull and ended up with the thing and then just painted that. But chances are, right, is one of the things that you should be aware of. And the store was like, fuck off, guys. No way. Nuh-uh. They were very defensive about it. They weren't even like, oh, geez, really? Oh, shucks. Okay, we'll look into this. Thanks for the heads up. It was not that. It was the opposite, right? So not everyone knows the tattoos, I guess is what it got me thinking about it. I assume that's what it was. Yeah, it's going to scour for those exact tattoos that try to help figure out who these people are. I guess I'm not really sure. Black Sun, Day's Fault, Iron Cross. Yeah, but there's so many. The fucking Nazis were like, you know, goddamn Pinterest with like all their fucking symbols and shit. They were so, I don't know, graphic designers at heart or something.
Into an altercation with a birdwatcher. You had people also in the early days of the pandemic trying to basically dox people that weren't taking COVID precautions, you know, taking photos of someone and being like, who is this person? Like they're not wearing a mask outside or whatever.
There was also a lot of videos of people who would like accost others for wearing masks, or like when employees at like Target or whatever would say like, you can't come in here without a mask. A lot of people reacted to that very.
Oh my God. The number of like just fucking minimum wage workers who got like assaulted and or shot to death because they're like, hey, sorry, you got to wear a mask. That was always one of the things, man. Like, oh, I was a lib at this point, so I was very like sneering at people for not wearing masks, but also like it's the simplest thing to do, you piece of shit. I get it that you're fucking, you know, full of lead and you're angry at everything, but like it's very clearly less about your own health because you're built different, brother. I know you're strong, but it's more about the weaklings around you, okay? Think of yourself as Superman protecting others. It's just about keeping your spit in your vicinity. And so it doesn't fly away and get into my mouth or my nose or my eyes or any of my other, you know, soft mucous membranes, okay? It's not about you, it's about others. So I was always pissed off whenever people wouldn't wear them. There's people who very proudly walk around the Walmart with no mask on because you can't stop me. And I was always like, you piece of shit. I would stare at them as they walk around kind of like, motherfucker, you know? But I never, you know, had the balls or never wanted to fight them or whatever it was. But I was just like, I feel like it's justified to be mad at people for like not taking public health seriously. And especially at the time when people weren't aware of things. And the vaccines weren't out yet. This is dangerous. You know, I go home to my fucking sick mother and then you help me kill her. What the fuck is wrong with you, asshole? You know? Still feel pretty fucking pissed about people doing that stuff. Because it's like, yeah, man, you're wearing a shirt. We ask you to wear a shirt because it's just fucking kind. I don't want to see your fat rolls, okay? You put on a shirt when you walk into the fucking store. Wear the mask. You know, just wear the mask like everybody else. It's just this fucking basic decency. So fucking annoying. Yeah. It was just frustrating to see it turn into this thing. And once it did, there was no going back because their brains lock in like a fucking lockjaw. They just... And now any possible reason to have empathy for others or to re-examine what they're doing, it's like, you know? Fuck, pissed me off. Just reminded me about that.
Violently, and often there was video of it, and then there was like research into like, who is this person?
A lot of that was happening on Twitter, but by the end of 2020, and I would say early 2021, I think most of it had moved to TikTok. As this sort of like viral surveillance culture is happening, and like Twitter was sort of formerly the nexus of it, I think TikTok supercharged it just so aggressively by leaning into like algorithmic discovery.
Yeah, I'm really curious what you think here, because I can think of a few accounts that also...
I was like probably like the last of the, like, there were like 2 people after me when I stopped wearing a mask in my work. There was like 2 other people that would wear it longer than I did. I wore it well after everybody else stopped. And eventually I stopped. And every now and then we go to a DSA thing and there's someone wearing like an N95 and I'm like, damn, they're showing more empathy than me. But also they could just be sick and they want to wear it. And there's been times where I've been like, oh, I have a cough or I have a sore throat, so I'll put this mask on when I go to work or something. And people are always like, what are you doing? And it's like, hey, I got this little thing. I don't want to spread it, you know? And they go, oh, okay, I guess that's cool. They kind of like understand the immediate reason to wear a mask as soon as you tell them because you wear it out of the blue. But they immediately ask you. Yeah, that's the thing that I think is awesome. I mean, I don't want to be like one of those dudes who are like, believes that, yes, the homogenous society of Japan is it's better than America. But I appreciate people being quiet and kind in public spaces. People are neat and tidy. Nobody leaves trash places. I've been told that CEOs clean their own toilets in Japan to this day. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I assume they still have their own layers of problems, but there is certain things that might just be more culturally built in, whereas it's not here. I got, poor people, spitting on the floor and saying, hey, that's what janitors are here for. They have to do their job. I'm giving them a job. They should be thanking me that I'm leaving my filth everywhere. And it's like, they aren't that kind. Well, I know they're not kind to foreigners, and they're very like xenophobic, and they have signs saying no gaijins, and there's a whole different like balance to things. And there's a lot of like, you need to go out with the bosses and drink with them after work, separation of, work life, home life, there's all kinds of different things that I've been told about. How much that bleeds into every single citizen's, world or whatever, I don't know. But I was raised to never litter. I would go outside, it's full of litter. It's like, fuck. Now, our social safety nets don't exist. Society doesn't exist. It's not a kind world that we live in. So when they feel like the world is a trash dump towards them, they leave trash. It's just one of those things. I understand where they're coming from. I eventually getting to be in a middle-class home and, appreciating my clean neighborhood would then take that energy elsewhere. Other people weren't given those same, benefits. But when you go to another country and you see how clean the streets are, you watch video from China and you see how nice it is, you go, damn, America is kind of a shithole, There's a suicide forest. True. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. I would just try not to be a shipper for, Japan, because I think Japan has lots of problems. I think one of the biggest problems is their xenophobia, which obviously leads to their current, it's one of the factors that leads into their population crisis or whatever. And also there are places that are non-homogenous, like China, that are clean. So it's not like you have to do that. Yeah.
On TikTok would sort of demonstrate how they were doing this research, and then those videos themselves would go viral. There was that guy who would like guess how tall you were based on like a couple different images and things like that. And it's like, this was all consensual and honestly like pretty cool, but he would show exactly like how he would do some of this research, like compare your photo to like a known length in another photo. And
that's fun. There's a lot of problems with lenses. So one of my favorite things to pull up, what is it? Yeah, this is a good example. It's gonna be some article. Yeah. So like focal length distortions. Okay, give me the image bigger. Thank you. Like I'm shooting right now at approximately 35 millimeter. So is this what real life is like? Or is this what real life is like? Definitely not this, right? So when you're looking at the foot and trying to do some measurements on it, the distance between his eyes changes dramatically. The amount of face that's left over on the side of the eyes changes dramatically. There's also distance to the lens and stuff, but that's you on the right. Yeah. Stare. 8 millimeter. They're also changing at 200. They're changing the distance, but also sometimes there's a different focal distance. So like this is very similar distance, right? This right here. And yet it drastically changes, even like a small millimeter change. It's interesting. So hopefully that person's able to take those impacts into account when they're making their size measurements. Because I have been the person, trying to do that before, where you use a small piece and then you use that data to extrapolate out to a large. Literally, when I'm looking at fucking 40K models, and I'm like, okay, how big is this? I'm trying to make a conversion for what my little monster is supposed to be. So I I don't own the original monster, but I want to know how big it's supposed to be so I can make my conversion look similar. So then I'm like using photos of the model and comparing where I believe a base size is to its base, and then using that math to see how tall a guy should be next to it. And then you end up with a horribly still way off measurement, even though you think you got it right.
Would sort of like show the calculations and how he was doing it. There was also like people who were able to geolocate you. Like this is sort of before the GeoGuessr guy, Rainbolt, but there was like, post a picture of yourself like in any parking lot and I will find out where you are. And then there were different accounts showing how they were doing that. And those went viral like all the time. And so I think it really popularized this idea of doing it for sport and for like pretty frivolous things.
And for content itself. Like, yeah, we had the rise of the consensual doxing videos on TikTok, which in some ways are great, right? Because they educate people about like privacy. Also, we're seeing this like generation of internet users, like Gen Z, also really kind of come into their own on the internet 2020 after, and they've grown up in this world. Like they understand how to search things. They understand a lot more than just, like you said, like the sort of standard Googling. The quintessential example of this to me too, of sort of like trying to find someone and TikTok really coming together with this mob sort of mentality around it, was the West Elm Caleb incident, which was, it was sort of started around the end of 2021 and into January 2022. Do you remember West Elm Caleb?
So I do, but I feel like you remember him so much better than me. I'm going to forget stuff, so I would prefer if you ran us through it.
One of my many online campaigns.
Florida is, I don't know if Clear Clash happened. I think it should have happened this month. I didn't hear about it, so maybe it got canceled entirely. But because I was like, oh, that's when I'm going to launch my streaming stuff again. Maybe I should try to like go and rub elbows with people or something. But then I would have the nosebleed seats. They would all be backstage anyway. It doesn't really matter. And I guess it got canceled or something, I assume, because there was a bunch of like drama between, you know, whatever people. It's very legal. It's very easy to make a fight in Florida. I think even the chess boxing matches were like designed in Florida because getting a fight license is, hey, what do you know? Not that many protections down here. So it's just a lot less hoops to jump through.
Cancellations was January 2022, to the point that I had to have a meeting with the New York Times to like, where I was working at the time, to like explain to them like what was happening and like why so many people were writing into the New York Times telling them that like I was abusive and needed to be fired. Basically, West Elm Caleb was a boy, for lack of a better word. Okay, this guy was a dick. Like he was dating lots of women. This is a young guy in his 20s. I actually wanted to profile him for the New York Times. He said absolutely not. So good for him. He sort of deserves his privacy after what he went through. But this guy, you know, he had dated multiple women around New York City and was kind of not being the best guy, right? Like he was sort of ghosting them. Like he was toxic. He was quote unquote love bombing. This guy never.
But also from the stories, I don't know if it's even confirmed or not, but it seemed like some people were like, oh, you and I couldn't be dating the same guy because we would have both had, you know, relations with him, had sex with him on the same day. But then they were able to compare times and go, wait, he was at my place sleeping over in the morning and we were having sex. And then the same day at night, he was having sex with somebody else and not being open about it, which is bad because that's not, if you're not coming in with the same expectations with each other, then you're not doing proper communication. So, you know, bad Caleb. Does he deserve to have his whole life ruined? Probably not.
assaulted anyone. This guy never did anything criminal. He just kind of a dick to some women, right? Of course, these women all end up making videos about him online and basically saying, hey, West Elm Caleb is a jerk. This is also around the time that like you're starting to see the emergence of the Are We Dating the Same Guy Facebook groups, right? All of these women came together and it set off this sort of firestorm on TikTok where not only did they dox him quickly, but they jeopardized his employment. I think he ended up actually losing his job over this. And then they looked up absolutely everything about him, and to the point that he was being harassed in the COVID testing line. Everyone just came together to destroy this man's life over, you know, yeah, some like he was a dick, but the video that I made at the time was like, hey, slow down. We should be careful. Like you guys are now at this point, like posting his family member's address and stuff, you know, like this is too much. And that was the first time I think where like TikTok had been exposed to this idea of like, maybe we shouldn't all dox someone. Like now I think if I had made that same video, like there are more voices of nuance, but at the time people.
I feel like at some point I remember when like somebody would be mean on Facebook posts, people would look up their Facebook account and see who their mom is and say, I'm going to text your mom what you're saying to me, you creep, you know? And like, I think that's valid, but it's still a layer of this. But if a person's saying, you know, horrible things to women or racist shit to somebody, like this is the early days of shit, but people would just be like on their Facebook with their fucking profile saying shit. And it's like, hey dog, you said it. And your shit's public, and you have your mom as your first friend, you know? Yeah, see ya. As always, the VODs will exist both on Twitch, but also on the Sniff and J YouTube channel. So you could always, in case there was, if you thought like, man, I really wanted to watch that Libya stuff, it would be there if you need to, but no pressure, obviously.
People were so livid, I guess, that I was coming out, quote unquote, in defense of this guy. I think the algorithm like feeds this like frenzy. Like it reminds me of like the Justine Sacco. It's sort of like that frenzy and that state of mind everyone experienced on Twitter in 2013 around Justine Sacco. It's like that 24/7 on TikTok.
Yeah, the thing about TikTok is that it happens from accounts that have very few followers. It'll be someone like talking about how their boyfriend, like they went through a messy breakup and he ghosted her or something like that. And then this account will have only, 100 followers or something like that. But the video itself will have millions and millions of views. And then there'll be an entire content ecosystem around it of people stitching the videos, of people commenting on the videos, of people green screening the videos and giving their take and that sort of thing. And I feel like that did happen on Twitter with random people occasionally, but I feel like it happens every single day on TikTok with pretty random people.
And like you mentioned, I think there's this like influencer economy around it, where like if you are the one to sort of collate a lot of information on today's viral character, that gets you clout, that gets you followers. And suddenly
Wish videos had more chapters. Like I want to see if there's like what we can do about it, regulations and shit. Because I get it. Lots of cases, they feel like it's happening every day on TikTok. Like, okay, that's just whatever. Get to the actual like what you want to do about it or what can be done about it.
You're getting discovered and fame through it. Whereas like previously, I don't think that was happening on Twitter.
I totally agree. I think that I'm on TikTok a lot. Like I'm a consumer of TikTok, every single day. And I find myself often sort of like missing the original video that people might be talking about, but seeing a lot of the content around it. And then having to sort of treasure hunt for like, what are people like actually talking about here? And having to, click the blue links that show up at the top of different comments. And often a lot of the comments are like, what is going on here? And then someone will explain and will have made videos about it. And it feels like there's just like an entire content ecosystem around this that does still exist in normal media where, you have something like the Astronomer CEO and there will be articles explaining like, here's what's going on. But I think it happens every single day on TikTok in this influencer / TikTok journalist ecosystem where it doesn't.
Man, being that kind of journalist where like you're Jennifer Zan and you have to come up with a fucking article every day for Vulture. And it's like, thank God there's some bullshit happening so I can just write something about this real fast. Oh my fuck. Like I could not stand a job like this where you just have to pump out something every day. Like it just, I guess I'm literally doing that kind of, but in a different way because this is just what I want. Not like you have to give us some kind of thing, I had the goal of making TikToks every day. And when it didn't spark joy in the right way, I was like, okay, I'm not going to push myself to pump these out, but I should still be making more of them. I've had a couple of ideas back in my head, but I've actually been doing more stuff in my real life again with like DSA and other things. So it's good balance. And but I also want to save time for doing some other projects and stuff. But it's just like, damn, like when we did my journalism school stuff, I was like, I don't want to be an every day I got to go out there and find a story kind of journalist, man. Like that just seems like it just fucking sucks.
On TikTok in this mainstream are there going to be articles about this as well, but it'll all be happening on TikTok and millions of people will see it, but it will like remain contained within TikTok.
Well, TikTok also like it takes like the SEO brain of like digital media in the 2010s and like puts it on steroids, because I think once somebody is trending or once somebody's name is becoming popular on TikTok, all of these content, these like news content creators are incentivized to like create explainer content around it. One thing I think also that starts happening, and obviously this really came to light around the Astronomer CEO, but like is there's also just like multiple angles of everything. It's very rare that there's just one viral video where there's just like one person recording. Now it's, especially in a concert, tons of people recording, but you start to see multiple angles of each viral video, and each person sort of comes out, has like a new take on it. And actually following the Astronomer CEO debacle, I actually saw TMZ published other footage from other people's cell phone cameras where you could see them kissing earlier in the night. And we've seen this also with just like protest footage and everything. It seems like there's just more footage of everything that's happening. And so when these viral moments come out, it's not just the viral video itself, it's all the other angles that you're getting of it.
Yeah, algorithm, please give me the other POV.
Yeah, you wrote in your piece, it's the sort of like TikTok help me find him or her.
Well, like there's like, there's like every now there's like a big thing. Like there's the fight at the pool where like the racist people were like bullying the black kids, but then they fight back. Or that one like yacht cruise ship that had the people fighting out in front of it or whatever because they weren't letting them dock or something crazy. Or maybe the other way around where these rich people wanted to cut the line, the dock instead of other things or something like that. There was some weird shit. A few of those things, but I'm like, good. I like these videos coming out and showing the shitheads. But but maybe the heroes in those stories are getting doxxed and hurt. And I would like ways to prevent those heroes from being hurt. I just like the video coming out of watching them get punched in the face. You know, I mean, I think that's funny. I think it's good. I guess we can have our cake and eat it too, as long as we can make sure that the doxing part doesn't happen. But the sharing the negative story doesn't have to come with, and then we ruined this racist person's life. It can just be like, these stories are out there to show that these things happen and they are real, and you need to be aware of them, so that way maybe you can slowly de-radicalize your racist parents or something. That's more of the angle of why I think these are good things to have or whatever.
Meme, but like just accelerated. I want to kind of talk about like also just the tech that makes this possible. You mentioned, you know, how it's evolved kind of throughout the years, but I think it's happening at such a fast rate now where like as soon as these videos go viral, we know exactly who these people are in seconds. And that is thanks to the rise of surveillance technology. And can you talk through some of like the tools I think that people are using to find these people? Because I think it's like, yes, it's social media. Yes, it's collective crowdsource stuff, but it's also things like PIM eyes, right? And like these AI tools. So how do those play a role?
Yeah, I mean, this is the part where I think I'm going to be like really tisky and like high-minded about this sort of thing, because there is this tool called PIM eyes that is a facial recognition software that you can upload the image of someone's face and it will search the internet for matches. And it has become very common for people to use this technology to find people. Whereas in the past, finding out who this CEO was might have required someone who knew them to see the video, or like just a lot of detective.
That's how I thought it happened, was just what happened that someone got it, which is why this is a viral weird moment, because it's a very random chance that it just happened to both be caught on the kiss cam, then that video made it to somebody who happened to know who they were to then confirm it, and then even them saying, yo, I know who this person is, then also got attention. Like, it was a very like unlikely thing to happen down the chain, but maybe that's not what happened.
Work. This can now be like a few screenshots from the video, upload it into this website, and it will return who that person is, like other places that person's face appears on the internet. And so not only can you like figure out who the people are, but you can also find out a lot about their online presence, because sometimes it will show drunk photos of them, blogs where they uploaded a headshot 14 years ago, things like that. And it's like the rise of PIM eyes, and then also this technology called Clearview, which does a very similar thing, but for police, that is really, really concerning to me, because this is technology that is used by the cops, like largely. But now you sort of just have like random people using it for sport against people that they see on TikTok. And in this case, it was like a rich man who, you know, is the CEO of an AI company. He's like very unsympathetic, let's say. But I have seen this same technology used against people who were like dancing weird at Taylor Swift concerts. Like there was an entire TikTok account that had a lot of followers. It had hundreds of thousands of followers, and it had millions of views. And people would upload video from Taylor Swift concerts, and they would say, hey, I want to figure out who this person is because I was too shy to talk to them. I thought they were really hot, or this person was screaming the whole time and it was really annoying. And the person who ran this account would use PIM eyes, and they would use other facial recognition tools, and they would dox this person. And like that impetus to sort of just like take any random public video and figure out exactly who is in it, I think is really dangerous. And I think it's just sort of like the normalization of surveillance.
I mean, you mentioned like Ring cameras in your piece too. And I think so often
So I just took a screenshot of my face in the chat, and I just threw it into this PIM eyes thing to see if it could find anything for me. And this looks like it's a shot of me from, dude, I was wearing a COVID mask. This must have been like, this must have been from like Nova or something. We were out eating at a group with a bunch of people. I think this is like a umbrella thing with a little motor and a little arm. Yeah. So, with a little gear crank thing. So that's just like from, I don't know why it says Yuli6868.com. It could have been like from a Goonhammer article, whatever. But that's interesting that it found that picture. So like that shit works, obviously, even with my very different looking face. I got like all forehead, no hair there, and then they find a whole different like facial expression with like eating food and scrunching up. Wow.
And this stuff is also like, who is this suspicious person? Like, I'm in a next door community for where I live. And there's so many posts where people just share a photo of somebody walking down the street or a screenshot from one of their Ring cameras. And it's like, who is this person? Find this person. I want to know if they're suspicious. Or I saw this person walking down the street and they look suspect. It's always a person of color. Like you said, I think we've just normalized the use of these really aggressive surveillance tools. And at the same time, too, when the police, obviously they use them, but they're using them so much more explicitly. I think you guys did another story too, but of ICE, like using this facial recognition app where they just sort of hold it in front of someone's face for a minute and they can like determine exactly who you are.
That's exactly right. It's like facial recognition tools in the past required like pretty advanced cameras that were pretty, like they were tied to the internet at that moment. And, you know, the databases were often pretty limited because it would be like local cops looking up local mugshots and things like this. And then with the rise of PimEyes and Clearview and these other new facial recognition databases, cops buy access to these databases, and from their phone, they can point their phone at you and say like, hey, who is this? And look you up. And we have just done reporting where ICE has a brand new app that does exactly this. And the databases that it's tied to are like the databases that like when you enter the country, they're tied to like airline databases, because increasingly you board planes without using a boarding pass. You just use your face, or you can go through TSA without.
That's what China does. Like in order to get into your apartment, you just scan your face. A lot of things. When I get my blood work done, I put my palm on this thing and it scans my palm. So that way they can check me in super fast, and then they update my account with all that information.
Giving them your ID, you just give them your face. And so these tools are getting like really, really powerful. And I do think that people are concerned about it in an ICE context or in a DHS type context. But these things are like very serious and very boring to a lot of people. We literally published my article about Astronomer and the article about ICE's new technology on the same day. And I think 40 times more people read about the Astronomer CEO. Some of my thinking about this is like, yeah, these people are not super sympathetic. I don't feel that bad for them. But if I can sort of like raise the idea that we shouldn't be like willy-nilly using facial recognition tools against random people on TikTok, maybe the next time someone sees an article about ICE doing the exact same thing, they'll at least have that context, like that this is not just being used by the police, it's being used by regular people all the time.
And I think what's also extra terrifying is that we're seeing all of this stuff happen, and the normalization of facial recognition and AI sort of identification tools happen also at a time when the government is seeking to remove anonymity from the web. And this is something that the Democrats have really been leading the charge on with the Republicans, where they want to use age verification to get everyone's face, tie all of your online activity to your offline identity through these kids' online safety bills or these anti-AI bills where they say, oh, well, we need your identity to protect you against deepfakes. So it's good that you have to scan your face before using every app on your phone or whatever. Obviously, that data will then just be used by the government. It can be used against you. Like, it is really scary. And I think that we're
Florida has put out, and I think Texas as well, and a few other places have, in order to get onto porn websites, you have to upload your ID. At least for the reputable porn websites. So people just say, okay, time to get a VPN or whatever, but they're trying to find ways to limit the use of these things, for better or for worse, probably for worse in a lot of times. I don't know. There's reasons to want to put guardrails on certain things, and there's reasons to want, because like there's been debate about the internet. You're allowed to be anonymous on the internet. You can be, you know, XYZ123 and you're making a post and saying something, and you wouldn't be you might not be as racist and vitriolic if it was like Facebook, where it's like your name and face. It's not a perfect system because obviously Facebook has its problems, but when people can just be anonymous little whatevers, it can cause problems. I don't think that you should have to put your ID into everything you do to do everything, but it's a whole different conversation, I guess, behind how safe do you want things to be. But then the question of at least with our American government, I wouldn't want them to have to, face scan myself before I say any post. Otherwise, ICE will be alerted to my face, and then I'm denied my flight, and then I'm arrested, whatever, right? Like that's the issue. When China does it, I think it's good because I'm just a China simp at this point, because of a lot of my influencers are very pro-China, and obviously there's problems and stuff, and even they talk about it, but I just love how much more they care about their citizens and their things, but they're also like not helping Palestine and shit and other lots of things that they're not great on, whatever. But and then certain, like the internet firewall that exists around China, I don't know if I like that. I understand it because it's used as a way to help protect them from stuff like Radio Free Asia and other bullshit things, but when do we get to remove that? When do they get to have, like, is our freedom too free? I don't think so, but we're also letting kids see beheadings and weird things when that wasn't good for me to have exposure to it. So I think it makes sense to try to figure out a way to find some way to put a barrier of some kind or something. Well, like they have very similar. Well, it's interesting because like that would be the same time. It's a bit of a libertarian hellscape in the sense that it's very open, right? But like, I'm sniffing Jay on Twitch and you're Happy Goat, you get to be anonymous here. I literally use my last name first initial. So in the internet firewall, your name would be your name, your social credit score. Not that that's really even anywhere close to what people are referring to, but it would be a part of everything. Like there's apps that, only show educational content, whatever it is, to kids, It's to keep us out more than it is to keep them in. Yes, but they also do have like very specific restrictions on the type of content they can be in, type of places, and algorithms are designed for certain things, like, and they're on their own. And there was like the rule that was put out that I don't know if it ever actually went into effect, but there was like the ban on kids playing video games over a certain number of hours. There's certain things, that they can use that apparatus for. So, when they have the global face scanning social security number built into a lot of data and biometrics, then it's much easier to restrict your ability to then do all these different things. But that could be a good thing, but it has to be done by an apparatus that you trust. And I would be more likely to trust the Chinese government than I would the American government, because the Chinese government has shown that it is there for its people, whereas the American government has been shown that it has been befouled and now is only there for corporations. That's not to say that the Chinese government could not at one point down the line eventually become corrupted or something. So there's a reason to even be afraid of even a good thing having something, because you don't know what the future brings. And the same way that like liberals were afraid of doing stuff like removing or stacking the courts or whatever, because, oh my God, what if the Republicans come in and do it? But it's like, dog, they already have control of it. So if they come in and then change it again, then that just puts them back at the status quo, but at least make them have to do something. Come on. Yeah. Yeah, they probably do use that as bait for things. I mean, I know that whether it's the FBI or the CIA, because of all the collection of CSAM, and they use it as evidence and or whatever, they have the largest library, but it does make sense that they then circulate it to then try to be honey traps or things, or blackmail traps or all kinds of layers of shit. So yeah.
we're seeing people just completely comfortable with like not only violating other people's privacy across the internet, but also like sacrificing their own privacy.
Yeah, and it's also happening in the exact same context as a bunch of cities and states passing mask bans. And so I see a lot of people on the internet say, well, like, maybe you should wear a mask when you go outside. And it's like, yes, maybe you should for COVID reasons. Maybe you should if you're going to a protest, but that's being criminalized.
By Democrats, by the way.
Exactly. And so it's happening in this context where steps that people would take to protect their privacy are disappearing.
And I think it's so hard to get anybody to care about tech policy and COVID and masking. We have seen literally no groups aside from sort of a couple, disability justice groups basically fighting these mask bans and fighting against it. Like no big leftist groups, no progressive social justice organizations. Like they have just completely dropped the ball on all of this stuff. I mean, in some sense, I understand there's so much going on, but I think this stuff is going to have significant implications.
Also, a lot of people have gotten really mad at me for this article, and I totally understand it because they look at this and again, these people are not super sympathetic. They're rich, they're CEOs, they're multimillionaires, and they were sort of flaunting this relationship in public. But the most common sort of response that I've seen is like, well, maybe they shouldn't have cheated in public. And it's like, yes, like maybe they shouldn't have. And they were also saying, well, there's no expectation of privacy when you go to a concert and you show up on the Jumbotron. I've been to many sporting events. I've been to many concerts. I know how Jumbotrons work. Most people don't mind being up on the Jumbotron. Most people like start dancing and having a good time. But I've also seen lots of kiss cams and things like this where it's like, these people don't want to be on screen. These people are not dating. They don't want to be kissing each other. Like something weird is happening. And at the same time, over the last few years, like I go to a lot of baseball games, I go to a lot of basketball games. Increasingly, you need to scan your face to get into the arena. At the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, you can't scan a barcode to get into that anymore unless you want to go to one special line that they have for the entire arena. Otherwise, you have to upload your face, you go through the turnstiles, and then you use your face to pay for everything. You go to concessions, you have to use your face. You want to buy a beer, you have to use your face. And it's like, this has just become so normalized anywhere that we sort of interact in public. And I think that I don't care what these people were doing. Like, I don't want to defend them, but at the same time, I don't think that going to a concert means that anything you do there should be broadcast to whoever and then fair game for anyone to research anything that they want to about you.
Yeah, well, there's this idea like every time you leave the house, well, you're stepping into the public realm of the internet then, and anybody has the right to surveil you. And in a sense, like, I mean, obviously I'm a huge defender of free speech rights and the right for people to, document things, especially journalists. But I think we need better norms around it. What's so scary too, Jason, is that like, and you know this too, is like this tech is always weaponized against unsympathetic people first. Like you always hear this argument, especially when the government wants to use some sort of invasive new technology. It's like, well, we're using this against these like unsympathetic people, right? Or like, oh, well, it's fine to sort of mass surveil bad people. But then that line, like the goalposts constantly move more and more and more until it's just normalized against everyone.
I keep thinking about the Apple versus FBI case, which is like the San Bernardino shooter had an encrypted iPhone and the FBI wanted the data off of this iPhone, and Apple would not unlock the phone. And the reason that Apple wouldn't do it is because they said, if we unlock the phone for you for this terrorist who killed a lot of people, who did something really awful, you are going to ask us to unlock the phones of people who are driving without a license.
I liked that. I liked that they did this. This is one of those times I was like, yeah, good. Not that I love the person, but just like the fact that the FBI couldn't get into an iPhone, I thought was crazy. I think iPhone got a lot of fucking good press from this, which then made a lot of people think that it was like an incredibly secure data thing, which isn't necessarily the right takeaway for Apple in general, but
undocumented immigrants, so on and so forth. And that's exactly what has happened, because the way that the FBI ultimately got into that phone was they got a third-party company to hack the phone. And now that third-party company that hacked the phone hacks the phones of random petty criminals all the time. And I think it's a sort of similar case where you had groups like the ACLU defending Apple, saying like, no, we're not going to give you the data off of this terrorist phone. And there were people at the time saying, well, if you're worried about this, just don't be a terrorist. And of course, like, don't be a terrorist. At the same time, it's not going to stop at terrorists. It's not going to stop at like the CEO who was cheating on his wife or whatever. And we've already seen, as we talked about a lot on this podcast, like it's being used against random people all the time.
And also, what is terrorism? Like speaking out against Israeli war crimes? Like you have to sort of think of how,
according to Britain, it is.
This technology would be used in the hands of the worst government, the people that hate everything you stand for, and think if you'd be comfortable to that.
Which is increasingly like not that hard to imagine, because we're seeing it happen in real time. We are seeing ICE use facial recognition technology against people who are working at hot dog stands, against people who are working outside of a Home Depot offering to help you build a deck or whatever. Like these people are not violent criminals, but they are having this
Okay, I don't think they go into look, just getting ahead. I don't see them covering any protections in Europe or whatever, which I think would have been a great way to. But maybe there aren't any, and that's the thing, is we need to build some. I do want to get to the other stuff. So I think we got through it. So this is actually one of the videos that was labeled, or one of the channels that was labeled as one of the ones that were bought by, there's a few different channels I looked at for watching this video, but this is one I've seen used in good ways. So task and purpose is one of the ones that was bought by private equity. So ears up for potential bullshit about it, but it looks like it covers a long history, and it's possible that they underreport U.S. involvement or different things. So I will try my best to not overly. I'll watch more than just one, I guess, but I think this might be a good just starting point to get through a lot of the background. And it's a channel that I think both has good production values and also supposed to have good information to some degree. So.
It's been over a decade since the war in Libya, and the nation is still ruled by warlord factions, unable to build state institutions or hold free elections. The vacuum of power in Libya directly led to the weapons and terror funneled into the Sahel region, which contributed to a string of recent military coups. The instability also caused a migrant crisis that reached all the way into Europe. The collapse of the Libyan government led to a rise in extreme groups inside Egypt that spilled over into Israel. The purpose of this video is to analyze the events and decisions that ultimately led to this catastrophe.
He's definitely like an OSENT guy in general, which has, at least from, I remember watching him on Hassan's channel once or twice, has had decent analysis on things, but also sometimes to some ways short-sighted. So again, caveats here.
Because I think there are some valuable lessons to be learned about the limits of US military intervention, as well as the horrors caused by ruthless dictators. It's my hope that if we examine the past, there might be some important takeaways to help avoid similar outcomes in the future. A quick disclaimer, we're going to be talking about some difficult subject matter like the effects of colonialism, authoritarianism, and foreign military intervention. So if you have a different point of view or perspective, please let me know. I'm always trying to improve my reports each time with your help. The action that set Libya on its modern-day trajectory was Italy's 1911 military invasion across the Mediterranean Sea. 34,000 Italian troops seized control of Libya from the weakened Ottoman Empire. Italy wanted Libya's agricultural land, vital raw materials, and most importantly, a foothold on the African continent to expand their economic trade. Take a look at the geography of the Mediterranean Sea on Libya's coast. It serves as a central maritime link between southern Europe, northern Africa, and western Asia, facilitating trade and cultural exchange. The economic importance of this land across the Mediterranean Sea has always led to conflict all the way back to the Punic Wars in 264 BC, fought between ancient Rome and Carthage. Once in control, Italian soldiers forced 100,000 Libyan Bedouin herders on a forced march to camps where thousands passed away. Italy then relocated 100.
Okay, Tales of his time. This is pre-World War I Italy. So definitely not, I guess, not the fascist part of Italy, but I mean, colonial part of Italy. So
thousand of their own citizens to assume control of the farmland in Libya. But this effort was short-lived because in 1940, British and Allied forces initiated a military campaign in North Africa, including Libya, as part of their fight against Italy, which had aligned itself with Nazi.
Okay, so Italy had controlled her for that period of time. I've heard of like the Desert Fox and like different parts of the African war, but you know, that doesn't really get shown in my media, doesn't really get growing up here. You know, it was like, you know, D-Day and maybe a little of the Pacific side, but African part, it was kind of like, you know, it's the dark continent where like we don't hear much about it, and they think the less we hear about it, the better, because they want people to have a negative thought about it.
Germany during World War II. Muammar Gaddafi was born in 1942 in one of these Bedouin tribes that faced persecution by Italian soldiers. In 1943, just a year later, Allied forces successfully liberated Libya. Approximately 78,000 military personnel from Britain, France, and the United States were casualties during the campaign to liberate North Africa from the Axis powers.
Okay, so World War II Italy controlled Libya, was freed by, or they were defeated during the mid part of World War II, 43. So
Britain maintained control during a transitional period, and in 1949, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution supporting Libyan independence, favoring the Sensoui monarchy under King Idris.
So I assume very similar to how Palestine was set up around this time, 1948, I believe, the governments that are eventually forming the UN, keeping things under British controlled rule and shit. I can see them setting up something with independence, but it would be setting them up with a puppet. Let's see.
Idris. During this time period after World War II, the colonial period was ending, and many countries in Africa and around the world were being given their independence. But there was a pattern of conflicts where people rejected what they perceived as illegitimate rule forced upon them by Western-backed powers.
Because, like, I know lots of places in Africa were they were no longer considered a colony, but they were given a lot of shit from France, forced to use their currency, lots of Franco intervention and stuff that goes to even close to this day or whatever. So I know that's a layer here that might not be getting talked about, would be these people being mad about the forced upon them by Western-backed powers because they are, in a sense, puppets to be the soft form of colonialism, but still colonialism.
But before we get into that, turns out Ridge is a brand new series of wedding band rings for men, just like for life.
Wow.
Carat gold, out, and everything else. The outer beveled
Yeah, exactly.
edge and inner convex shape, size placements, whether you lose
tactical
the ring
combat ring
for more of them. And just like they've got something, check them out and make sure to use codes in 1959. Make checkout to get 10% off. Further complicating things, in 1959, major oil reserves were discovered inside Libya when Gaddafi was just 17 years old. It must have been like his country won a multi-billion-dollar lottery. Suddenly, your next-door neighbor hits you up asking for money. Out of nowhere, the United States is interested in being your best.
Wait. Oh, the oil reserves are discovered. I see. That's what it was. I was like, what was it again?
Years old. It must have been like his country won a multi-billion-dollar lottery. Suddenly, your next-door neighbor hits you up asking for money. Out of nowhere, the United States is interested in being your best friend. But the problem was, Libya didn't have the skilled labor, machinery, or capital needed to successfully extract the oil.
They're just not skilled. Those. Oh, what a shame. Oh, what a shame. This sounds just like South America, where they say, oh, come on. I think, what was it? Was it Argentina or Venezuela, where, like, they had all of their British Petroleum motherfuckers set up to do these things, and then when they kicked them out, they took all their stuff with them and didn't leave them the equipment, didn't leave them with, I'm thinking of, oh shit, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a really Burkina Faso. I was watching a thing on that, and they had the same problem where they needed equipment, so they ended up going to Russia, and Russia was like, "We'll give it to you, don't worry about it, for nothing, but maybe give us some price back or whatever." So they were able to get the equipment because like their oil production dropped dramatically when they. Burkina Faso. Yeah, it's really beautiful name of a place. Whenever I heard it pronounced, I'm like, oh, that sounds awesome. Like it's just like, my mouth's doing a backflip. It just felt like awesome to try to say it, but it's just I remember it's cool. It's all. It was just like a stupid way to look at it, but yeah, because their leader was like seen as a positive thing, and like they were going around and. Helping their country, nationalize their oil reserves. So like Libya should be able to nationalize it and build it up on its own, but instead motherfuckers are gonna come in and take it.
King Idris struck a deal with foreign Western oil companies that some believe was unfair.
What do you know? What do you know he did this? What do you know? the installed fucking king, not a democracy, but a king installed, just so happens to bring in companies because they just didn't have the fucking skilled labor. I'm beginning to see the problems with this channel already.
For Libya. Under the agreement, foreign petroleum companies would create the mining infrastructure inside Libya in exchange for control of a majority share of the revenue. From Gaddafi.
Oh, what a great deal.
Gaddafi's point of view, he saw Western countries once again taking advantage of his nation's resources and their vulnerable situation. In 1963, Gaddafi joined the military in Libya and created a revolutionary group with cells of troops that were loyal to him. In 1969, he led a coup d'etat against King.
Dude, we are fast forwarding through this. Holy shit. Okay, but it makes sense that Westerners are stealing everything from them, and the government that was brutal and put in place that has no reason and no vision to be fair to its people, not democratic at all. They rise up and fight it back and kick the Westerners out, I assume. A bloodless coup. That's like not even like seen as like an evil thing. What the fuck? The leaders. Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that inside of a thing. Like every night they gather, like something like 50 people gather, and they just like say prayers and they just hang out, and they're just like, no one's going to come and do this. They have to do it over our dead bodies, basically, that we love him so much. And we know that he is constantly trying to be killed because, wouldn't you know it, a motherfucking person who's just democratically trying to help its people and allow them to have the wealth of the land that they are a part of, it just so happens to have some people want to kill them.
Who he believed was too friendly with the West. He then abolished the monarchy, kicking out any of the remaining Italian people from the country, and established the Libyan Arab Republic. This new government identified with the ideals of sovereignty, socialism, and unity.
Oh my God.
Most importantly, Gaddafi demanded renegotiation of the oil contracts with foreign companies. He threatened to completely shut off oil production to the West if it wasn't agreed that they would give him better terms. Gaddafi said,
not even like are taking all of it, just better terms.
Quote,
what the fuck?
My people have lived without oil for 5,000 years. We can live without it again in order to attain their legitimate rights. The American oil company Occidental gave in to his demands, and Libya became the first developing country to successfully secure a majority share.
Oh my God. They only give him 51%. That's insane.
Share of their revenues from their own oil resources. After this, it set a precedent in other.
I mean, like, if you didn't think that that should be the default, what the fuck? What the fuck?
Arab nations demanded the same equal treatment. There's this geopolitical concept called geographic determinism that I think is important to understand when talking about a nation like Libya that depends so heavily on one single resource like oil. Geographic.
They only depend on it because we find it to be what's, you know, the resource valuable to us that's there. They've been living there for 5,000 years, like he was saying.
Determinism suggests that your nation's climate, natural resources, and geography play a significant role in determining your people's cultural development and history. For example, the people of Libya didn't get to choose where their coastline was or where their oil reserves were placed, but this is the hand that was dealt to them. This concept has actually been
They deserve it. What the fuck?
Used to support the theory that the arid climate of the Sahara Desert, located in Libya, formed millions of years ago, contributed to this region's isolation today. Now, this theory has fallen out of favor recently because it's kind of rude to suggest that the Libyan people have no agency of their own, and it completely ignores how human beings are able to adapt and overcome these natural
It's kind of rude. It is kind of rude. You're right.
And ultimately, how Gaddafi chose to play this hand was his choice to make. Right after taking power, Gaddafi actually did try to use his newfound oil funds to help his citizens. From 1969 until 1975, the standard of living, life expectancy, and literacy inside Libya all grew rapidly.
Socialism, common socialism W. Common socialism W. Literally the thing that happens every fucking time. Yeah, it's like, well, some people think it's rude. They even say everybody. Yeah.
Gaddafi's government attempted to provide free education, healthcare, and promised free housing for all his people.
And it only needed 51% to try this. It didn't even need all of it. It deserves all of it. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you? You know, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, yeah, but like, you know, Great Britain's sure is pissed that they're on a fucking rocky island with nothing but bad weather and no good food. It's like, okay, sucks to suck, bitch. Fuck you.
This is what's called the authoritarian bargain, where the people pledge their loyalty and give up personal freedoms in return for...
They give up personal freedoms like free education and healthcare and better quality of life, life expectancy, literacy. Yeah, that's the authoritarian bargain. What the fuck?
Economic benefits. There was a serious housing crisis in Libya at the time. However, local building contractors inside Libya were inexperienced in how to correctly build large housing projects.
Oh, they were just too stupid and brown to do it.
This ironically led to near total dependence on...
Hold on. Did they say where this paper's
Libya
from?
at the time. However, local building contractors...
It's just... What paper is this? What is this from? I would love to know what this is from.
Inside Libya were inexperienced in how to correctly build large housing projects. This ironically led to near total dependence on foreign companies. Gaddafi made the problem worse by creating socialist laws that stated, quote, no one has the right to build a house additional to his own for the purpose of renting it. This prevented...
Oh my god, dude. What the fuck? That's so based. What the fuck?
The private sector from having any incentive to build property in Libya. We'll see this.
Why would you have incentive? Ew, gross. You want to become a landlord? Oh.
This is the very thing that will come back to haunt Gaddafi later. According to Gaddafi's Green Book manifesto, he wanted to unite the entire African continent under one...
Ah, so there's a red book and then there's the green book, which is different than the American Green Book, which was about slavery.
Single rule that would make them powerful enough to stand up to foreign intervention.
What does drip? What the fuck? What is this? Who are these? Oh my god. Are these like different African leaders or whatever? That's crazy.
Starting in 1978, Gaddafi launched military campaigns into neighboring Chad in an attempt to acquire a strip of land that was rich in uranium.
This could be bad. Obviously, lots of information I don't know, but I assume, you know, invading a sovereign country for stuff is bad. But yeah, it looks. I mean, it looks cool.
Uranium deposits, a resource necessary for developing nuclear weapons. The French military intervened with
I was like, this could be bad, unless the Chad is not the Chad, but basically just France.
3,500 soldiers and bomber aircraft to protect Chad.
Oh, they were just being so nice to Chad. They were just being so nice to Chad. They were just, they're all willing to put their lives on the line to die for them. They're not willing to do this now for Palestine, though. No, they're definitely not. But back then, they were built different. I swear. Yeah, it was all for themselves. All just to be nice people.
They successfully stopped Gaddafi from illegally seizing this land. It's times like...
Would have been illegal. Those French people in this other land stopped them from trying to take over this land. How did those French people get there?
Like this, where you could see where people might get selective memory and only remember the times where military intervention successfully stopped wider war. Gaddafi also led military campaigns into Egypt in the late 1970s, further destabilizing the North African region. His armies included very young soldiers, and he was famous for making political opponents.
Wait, why was that asterisk?
Region. His armies included very young soldiers.
Double asterisk. Is there a thing here? No? It's crazy to have a video like this and have no resources in the description? That's crazy. Like when I edited a video for Cita Marxism, every single article I had was detailed in a large description post I gave him with all the different, uses and everything. What the fuck? That's crazy to have a channel this established where literally like other capital come in.
Soldiers, and he was famous for making political opponents disappear. He was known for his unique personal style that included flowing robes, sunglasses, and elaborate headgear. When he traveled to a
That's very 2000s of him.
foreign country, he would set up a giant Bedouin tent outside like he was still a nomad traveling the desert. These actions earned him many nicknames like the Mad Dog of the Middle East. Gaddafi didn't have this.
Wait, why is setting up a tent like how they did culturally before? Why is that a bad thing? I don't understand. Like, he's not even like, he's just sitting out there chilling. Like, why is that? He's camping. I don't get how that's like a negative.
Same set of tools to project power as the United States. He didn't have the ability to build aircraft carriers, but he could use his massive oil revenues to fund unconventional means to attain power. He backed an endless string of clandestine attacks abroad, like the 1972 Munich Olympics and the
It's real crazy to phrase him trying to be clandestine and responsive to his geopolitical neighbors who have been, just like his country, colonized under the new definition and then trying to help them get out of it. It's like Cuba trying to help, was it Congo? I forget where they tried to help out. And like, Che Guevara went over to help. It's not a clandestine operation when you were doing clandestine shit first. You have a puppet government in there. You are clandestinely in front. This is a moral and just fight from behind it, underneath it. And to not talk about how those things are not legitimate rulers of these lands. He was trying to get a nuke. He wanted to get a nuke so that way they would not have control. He would be safe. Went to Congo. Was it Congo? Yeah, because I think that's where they caught him. Right, that's where he died in that trip, or in that because he was trying to help them fight the very similar guerrilla fight for their independence, just like they were. Man, I feel like, and this is not a new revelation or any mass information, but I'm like, it's so obvious to me now the more I think about it and then put all these things in the context, because like my dad celebrates when he died. They see him as a terrorist, they still paint him as a bad guy, and he was just trying to undo all of the things that were happening in the country around him. And the amount of damage we've done to the humanity and the world all comes from the shit that everyone has been doing to Africa. Because there's so many different genocides that I hear about, and I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about that. There's so many different things happening. There's so many different things. I think I was growing up during South African shit and like didn't hear nothing about it. Never taught about it. Nelson Mandela was taught as a terrorist / that leader guy who's in jail. It's like, he's a leader and he's a fighter, but he did violence, but negative things, as if there wasn't generational violence done against him first. My stomach is turning because I'm not trying to be all like lib about it. Like, oh my God, I just found out about racism, guys. It sucks. But it's like, it's just like trying to put it into perspective, the generations of damage and shit. And people say that capitalism is awesome. Like it literally requires that kind of shit. It's so fucked. And just watching this channel, I mean, like, I'm basically done with this channel at this point. Just because like, I can't handle the fucking angling of it. There was another channel I found that was called New Africa. That when I looked at their channel, they seem to have lots of different things from the African perspective, looking at a lot of different countries and a lot of different rulers. China and Africa, what's really going on? Benefit or exploitation? Now, this could be, you know, a front or whatever it is, but we'll see. But just based off of like the title of the channel and the contents of all the different videos it has, they had a brief history on Muammar Gaddafi. So I'm kind of curious to see this one's perspective, just because the last one I think was just a little too fucking imperial for me to fucking be able to stand it. Wait, I did the title. Silly me. I did that here. And then I go backwards and then I grab this. And then I put that there. My bad.
As many charismatic post-colonial leaders, there is perhaps no one quite as mysterious as the late Muammar Gaddafi. The self-proclaimed brother leader who led the North African state of Libya from his entry into power in a bloodless coup in 1969 until his shocking death in 2011, was a man who inspired deep admiration and respect in the minds of his supporters and provoked feelings of intense hatred and disdain in the hearts of his detractors.
Now, it is possible that power corrupts. What is it called? Paranoia. Other things can take place. Doesn't mean this guy's a good guy or only ever did good things. Which this video might be able to show. Do you think it was nuanced and or appropriate or like from a good perspective? Because I was hoping that something more from somebody perhaps who even lives in Africa would have a better perspective on the topic. But I mean, they're just another person, right? They could still have the same imperialistic views or whatever.
From his extravagant robes to his signature sunglasses and his band of female bodyguards, Muammar Gaddafi was as eccentric as he was enigmatic. Embraced by South African President Nelson Mandela for his support for various black liberation movements both within and outside of Africa, but labeled the Mad Dog of the Middle East by American President Ronald Reagan for his defiantly anti-Western foreign policies, Gaddafi's
Oh, he's the one that called him the Mad Dog. I see.
42-year reign as Libya's leader would see him win the allegiance and adoration of many African leaders, while simultaneously becoming a universal figure of hate all around the Western world. To some,
being seen as hated by the Western world, that doesn't carry shit to me, dude. You know, we hate Osama bin Laden for doing bad things. Sure. We hate ISIS. Sure. Yeah, makes sense. But to say that a leader is hated doesn't mean shit to me.
A revolutionary and visionary hero. To others, a dictator and promoter of terror. Muammar Gaddafi was...
So this channel coming out with some stuff to like phrase it and to prepare people for it and to bring them into it, I'm hoping that they do an awesome job.
In many ways, the
and Israel.
Perfect embodiment of the old adage, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter.
Hell yeah.
Born in 1942 to a poor nomadic community near the Libyan city of Sirte, Muammar Gaddafi's early years were very humble indeed. As a young man, he would develop a strong admiration for larger-than-life political figures such as Francis Charles de Gaulle and China's Chairman Mao. However, his biggest political idol by far would be the Egyptian president, Gamal Abdel Nasser. A fully fledged...
Ooh, there's more of my blind spots because I'm like, I don't know shit. All I know is Egypt currently is a vassal state for the U.S., puppet governments controlled by us and Israel, and is not good. That's my understanding of the Egyptian government at its time right now. Literally don't know any of the leaders involved in it historically or whatever. So I don't know when it got set up like that. I don't know how long it's been like that. I don't know who is good before and after. So I guess we'll learn maybe.
Arab nationalist, Nasser would be a strong proponent of pan-Arabism, and his bright vision for the future
Dude, paranoiarism is something, well, it's one of those things that, like, again, if the world just had a couple of things happen differently, this place could be a whole different world, space communism, who knows? But, like, I think it was right around World War II ending, they were constantly destabilizing so many of these places in the region, because the same way there is the Americas, in the same way that there is the European Union, they did not want an Arab Union to happen because they knew oil was the new thing, and they did not want them all working together. And they wanted them to be separated and divided. They wanted them to be conservative and have religious wars, and they wanted them to constantly be in conflict, because if they could actually work together, they would be a powerful thing. And the last thing they wanted was another power to have to work with, to have another base of population. I mean, like, if you think about all the fucking good things that come out of Europe and America, the different inventors, the different companies, the different technologies, we could have had a whole other sector of human lives spinning up, being geniuses, being empathetic, being everything, entertainers, a whole nother fucking sector to build and to just make humanity thrive. And instead, we turned it into a cesspool of death and destruction and hatred. And it just makes you really fucking hate, because it's like the opportunity cost. We've lost so much potential, the human race. We've caused so much suffering to the human race. I mean, we might fund it less than others, yeah.
Future would be one in which all Arab countries would come together and unite to break the Western world order.
Dude, that would be, I was thinking even just this, but like, if it, oh my God, that would be, oh my God, yeah.
Deeply inspired by the ideas of Nasser, Gaddafi would join the Libyan Royal Academy of Benghazi, where he would spearhead the creation
a word I've heard a lot, I don't know shit about,
of a revolutionary group known as the Free Unionist Officers Movement, which would be modeled after Abdel Nasser's Egyptian Free Officers Movement. In September 1969, a 28-year-old Muammar Gaddafi and his band of revolutionaries would successfully orchestrate a bloodless coup against the highly unpopular monarchical regime of King Idris, who
kings unjustified, not placed there by God, but placed there by Americans or British or whatever. How do you do a bloodless coup? Like, how do you actually, I guess you just take over the military and say, look, we control everything, give up. And they say, fine.
had ruled the country since independence, but had long been seen by many regular Libyans as deeply corrupt and overly subservient to Western interests. Upon seizing power, the Free Unionist Officers Movement would become the Revolutionary Command Council, and Lieutenant Gaddafi would become Colonel Gaddafi.
I mean, that sounds like the best of both worlds. You get a revolution, and you also didn't have to commit war crimes along the way. Because people say, like, you know, yeah, oh my God, it's so much better. I mean, there's less about the original part with like Italy coming in and doing that stuff. But again, that was like a throwaway and really fast. Then they just fast forwarded right to this part, and then they started going bananas with their shit. So I want to see more.
As the leader of the RCC, Colonel Gaddafi would effectively...
Because they also didn't talk about like if that leader was installed by others. You know, they just said that they're being kind to them. They didn't talk about the oil reserves giving a heavy deal over, but they might cover other specific parts. So that might just be the preamble. So we'll see.
Become Libya's de facto head of state and go on to be the single most important force in the shaping of his nation's destiny. Following the death of Gamal Abdel Nasser shortly after the Libyan Revolution, Gaddafi would take it upon himself to fulfill his hero's Pan-Arabian vision. All through the 70s, he would attempt to create greater political union between Arab and Islamic African states by proposing a series of bilateral and multilateral agreements between his government and the governments of Egypt, Sudan, Tunisia, Syria, Chad, and Morocco. Gaddafi's...
Syria looks so small here. I guess because this is Iraq, and this is Iran. This is the UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Lebanon, and then Israel. I don't know if that's supposed to be the West Bank. I'm not sure. And then this one here, Jerusalem. I'm learning a little bit. I'm getting better at my geography. I would never be able to tell the difference between Iraq and Iran. Then Afghanistan is actually like way over here somewhere, which is crazy how far away it is from everything in comparison. Yeah.
Pan-Arabian
no French.
initiatives would ultimately prove unsuccessful, and after declaring that the Arab world was finished, it would fully abandon Pan-Arabism in favor of Pan-Africanism.
Some of that stuff is definitely too much to do in one lifetime.
Inspiration from Chairman Mao's Little Red Book, Gaddafi would famously document his entire political philosophy in a 3-part publication known as the Green Book, which in theory at least, would serve as the structural underpinning of his new nation's entire political system. The Green Book would contain Gaddafi's third universal theory, which according to him was the blueprint for the creation of a perfectly egalitarian society which was free from the economic inequalities of free market capitalism and the authoritarian tendencies of Marxist communism. In very simple terms, Gaddafi's third universal theory could be best described as a complex mixture of ideas drawn from classical liberalism, Marxist socialism, and Islamic theology. The philosophy would reject the widely accepted Western models of representative democracy in favor of direct democracy. According to the Green.
Interesting. I never heard a direct democracy because that's what, literally vote on everything, I guess. I mean, hey, with the smartphones and shit, you can vote a lot faster now.
Book. Societies run by elected congressmen and members of parliament were not true democracies, as the voices of the masses were drowned by layers and layers of complex bureaucratic processes, which were completely alien to the average voter. According to Gaddafi, a truly democratic society was one in which decisions were taken not by elected legislators, but by popular congresses and committees made up of the voters themselves. Putting Gaddafi's political theory to the...
I have some concerns, but I guess you could still have political movements. You just have to have it among the people. You don't have it as a person running for an individual office. So somebody like Zoran could try to inspire his fellow voters all over the nation, not just literally New York City, to push for voting on things. Because I would love to vote like Zoran, but I am stuck here, not there. They were direct democracies. Well, they were probably like white male landowners. So I guess they didn't have, well, they may have had their own version of white, but I'm guessing that there was some still layers to it. But they had a Senate and shit, right? Like that was a whole and an emperor. So I imagine there was complications and differences, nuances. But because I'm thinking for example, people don't like trans people right now. People don't like, people at one point loved slavery. You know what I mean? So the exact MLK was seen as a bad person even when he was popular, when he was out doing his thing. Civil Rights Act was seen as a negative thing, right? I was just assuming. It's a combination of, it's been a very long time. I am closer to 40. I'm 37. So it's been a long time since I was in my high school, world history class. And that was only one section, one chapter. And unfortunately, I was more inspired by the abs and spears than I was. Okay, fair. See. But anyway, I'm worried about sometimes the masses not being able to have nuance and understanding on things. So elected leaders are good because they're supposed to sit and listen to experts and then weigh in on things. Not like, should we ban TikTok, y'all? And then all the wine moms say, hell yeah, and they all vote for it, right? There's layers to having someone's job to be the government versus everybody just has to vote. Why just the House specifically? Not the House and the Senate, but specifically the House? Because the Senate is like weird because Delaware and Wyoming get the same number of senators as New York City, despite them having very weird amounts of human population and land mass, and it doesn't really represent the people that well. Whereas the House technically has people that represent the people in their like numbers. The Senate is weird because it's there just to empower states, no matter how popular they are or populous they are. It's there to empower the state's power versus the person power. Like, I understand they put it there for a balance, but it's a balance to give state power, which I guess is to give the slave power. Like, it's just weird. Oh, I see. That's interesting. Yeah, because of the whole electoral college versus just popular vote. Yeah.
The test. The Libyan.
But I guess at that point you would just say no electoral college, popular vote, if you wanted that part. Yeah.
State will be converted in 1977 from the Libyan Arab Republic to the Great Socialist People's Libyan Arab Jamahiriya.
Dude, look at that flag. That's crazy. Oh my God, it was just a green box? That's sick. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's like a green screen. It's almost chroma key color.
Which, in accordance with the Green Book, would be a direct democracy.
Hey, all good. No worries. You've watched me do that 100 times.
In which the Libyan people would rule themselves through 187 basic people's congresses.
Oh, there you go. Oh, okay, there you go. So it's not your job to have to understand water regulations and blah, 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 blah. You still have something.
Each of these basic people's congresses will then send representatives to the General People's Congress, which on paper at least would be Libya's most powerful political unit, as all major political decisions had to be approved by it. But while the Jamahiriya was a democratic utopia on paper thanks to its unique legislative structure, the reality would be a lot different. In practice, the General People's Congress would do nothing more than rubber stamp all of Gaddafi's policies, which would lead Gaddafi's political opponents to condemn the regime as being nothing more than a dictatorship in democratic clothing. Gaddafi's Green Book would also place him at odds with Islamic scholars at home and abroad.
So, I don't know if those people opposing it were just like, we lost, we're mad. Let's blow up the whole thing, which is not a great thing in my book.
Due to his failure to fully accept all of the tenets of Islamic Sharia law. Gaddafi would declare Sharia law inappropriate for the Jamahiriya as he considered the protection of private property under Islamic law to be incompatible with the socialist principles of his third universal theory. This declaration...
I don't know shit about Islamic shit, so fucking... I don't know that there's special laws about private property or whatever in the Quran. Like, I got nothing, so...
would lead many scholars to accuse...
Also, I'm obviously, as a Reddit atheist, you know, I like secular states, you know, sorry, whoever.
Accuse him of the sin of idol worship, as they considered that he was essentially elevating his Green Book to place it on an equal footing with the teachings of the Quran.
Again, secular government, man, little that makes sense. You know, it's like saying in America, the Constitution is at the level of the Bible, and it technically is supposed to be above it in the form of the government and law.
But despite his gripes with Islamic clerics and his domestic political opponents, Gaddafi would for many years be hugely popular with the masses, thanks to his regime's rollout of a wave of nationalizations in the oil industry, which would see Libya become the first developing country to secure a majority stake in its own oil revenues. Thanks to its abundant oil revenues, the Gaddafi regime would make significant investments into the country's infrastructure and greatly improve its healthcare and education systems. Thousands of acres of land which were owned by foreigners and members of the old royal family would be seized and redistributed to local farmers who would be provided with government salaries until the farms became profitable.
Oh my God, beautiful. Literally beautiful.
The government would also subsidize
just close your eyes, theists. Just don't look at this part of it. Don't worry about it. It's not supposed to be a religious state. It's supposed to be a government that helps its people. Just close your eyes. You'll be okay. Just go get an education. Go get some free healthcare. Get a job. You know what I mean? Like, come on, man. Yeah. Someone told me that the word Sharia literally means law. So it's kind of funny that it's like, oh, they're going to install law in our lands. I would hate that. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's funny.
That is the construction of public housing for many of Libya's poor. And during the course of Gaddafi's reign, Libya's overall literacy rate would rise from 10% to 88%.
Actually, amazing. Better than our current literacy rate, I believe.
While its life expectancy would rise from 57 to 74, and its infant mortality rate would fall from an African average of 125 deaths per 1,000 live births to 15 deaths per 1,000 live.
We have 5.56 deaths per 1,000 live births currently. Ooh, and that was a few years ago. So if this was in the 70s-ish, somewhere between the 70s and, maybe the 90s, we were somewhere around 8 ourselves. So it was like, come on, man.
Live births. In the year before Gaddafi's death, Libya's estimated GDP per capita of $12,062 would be the highest in all of Africa, as Libya would also be ranked as the only African country with a high Human Development Score in the 2010 Human Development Index, posting a better score than Russia and China, as well as Eastern Europe.
Okay, well, this was before their game was turned on, all right? Whoa. Check out their high-speed rail. That starts right around 2012-ish or something like that. Okay, give them a break.
European countries such as Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, and Serbia. Unlike virtually every other African country, Gaddafi's Libya was financially self-sufficient.
Also, Saudi Arabia, human health score, who you testing? What the fuck?
And not indebted to any international banks.
There's literally slave labor. Also, Yemen red, the poorest country in the world, I think, under certain metrics.
Financial institutions. His regime would also embark on a number of groundbreaking infrastructure projects, the most prominent of which would be the world's largest irrigation system, known as the Great Man-Made River. This $25 billion irrigation project would be developed to move fresh water across Libya's dry lands through a 4,000-kilometer network of water pipes. Beyond its domestic and
yeah, it does, doesn't it? They literally bring in non-Saudis and use them as slave labor. Am I thinking of the UAE instead? Global Slavery Index. Estimated number living in modern slavery. 53 out of 100 vulnerability. Modern slavery in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the highest prevalence of modern slavery of all countries in the Arab states region. Migrant workers who comprise the majority of the workforce are particularly vulnerable under the kafal system, a restrictive work permit system that ties migrant workers to their employer. The system embeds a steep power imbalance between employers and employees by granting employers substantial control of the workers' lives. With risk exacerbated during COVID-19 pandemic, despite this, Saudi Arabia is also among the countries taking the most action to address modern slavery. Since the 2018 Global Slavery Index, The government has improved efforts to support survivors, including launching natural referral mechanisms and address characters by implementing reforms of the kafal system. Although these reforms have been insufficient to dismantle the systems entirely, opportunities for further action include blah, 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 prevalence, forced labor, forced commercial sex exploitation of adults and children, forced marriage. So I do remember there was some stuff about in Yemen, there was some slavery, but again, that was like forced upon them. So there was a lot of talk about that, about when Hassan interviewed one of the Tim Houthi Chalamet, and thinking that he might have been a member of the Houthi family. Sure, it's not like chattel slavery, yeah, but you live here and you get food and clothing here, and that's it, you know. Yeah. Hey, 13th Amendment makes a specific expectation for it.
Endeavors. Muammar Gaddafi would also embark on developing significant Pan-African projects. The strongman of Tripoli would contribute $300 million to the commissioning of the Regional African Satellite Communication Organization, which would be instrumental in relieving African countries from their dependence on European satellite systems and save African governments a combined total of over $500 million per year. Gaddafi would also make further contributions to a number of other major African infrastructure projects for the construction of roads and railways, and would also set up a $5 billion fund which would be used for the development of five-star hotels, religious buildings, mobile phone companies, and mining companies all across the African continent. Fully embracing his ideological switch from Pan-Arabism to Pan-Africanism.
It's just a Western graph. You know, Cuba was no data, right? Like they were like, you know, let's see Cuba's literacy rate. Let's see Cuba's, you know, healthcare and life expectancy. Oh shit, compared to the US?
Gaddafi would begin calling on African governments to work towards the creation of a United States of Africa, complete with its own united military, single currency, and single passport.
Wow.
Putting his money where his mouth was, he would be the most important driving force behind the creation of the African Union in 2002, hosting a number of important meetings in the Libyan city of Sirte, and pushing Africa's two largest economies of South Africa and Nigeria towards greater cooperation. Gaddafi would also specifically...
That would be the opposite of what I was saying before, where I was thinking about all the pain and death and exploitation that happens. That would be, and then all the different lives that would, and then all the Einsteins that are forgotten and never, you know, educated. Holy fuck. I'm sure this is going to have a sad ending, but yeah. Damn. I mean, they would, China came from like in the 90s. It was really bad from what I've been told. The poverty rate was so high, which is why modern China has the most, like, it's blown out of the water the number of people it's pulled out of poverty in such a short time period, and, you know, improve quality of life to such a degree that, I mean, the same way in America we get mad at Biden when our lives get worse. They love their government because their government makes their lives better. Like, that's just like every year for like decades, every year your life is getting better. That's crazy. Like that's never a thing. Your life is staying maybe the same or getting worse every year in America. You know what I mean? Like every year your life gets better than the last, better than the last, better than the last. Sometimes with huge jumps and still getting better, still getting better, still getting better. I mean, that would be so incredibly inspiring.
Push for the inclusion within the Constitution of the African Union of a roadmap for the creation of an African Monetary Fund, an African Central Bank, and an African Bank of Investment. His government would also cover the African Union membership costs of poorer African countries, and at some point, Libya's total contribution to the AU's annual budget would amount to about a third of the total.
I mean, it's crazy that like 51% of their oil could basically do 70% of all. It's like the money earned from resources is able to like, that's a small glimmer of the decades of theft. I mean, I have a lot of hope for what America could be. I mean, we're in the dumps now. We can make things better every year from here on out. Absolutely. We're the richest country. Even over China right now. We're technically the richest country. Their economy is growing, but we're the richest country according to certain metrics still. So we have no excuse. Just fucking pull the troops back. Keep them troops. Keep their salaries. Army Corps of Engineers. What do you mean? Like, they're already serving in the middle of fucking nowhere, sleeping in a goddamn barrack somewhere. Just bring them back here. Put them in fucking Appalachia. Help them build shit. Put them out there in like the rural towns. Build hospitals. Don't like suit up in fucking armor and like tanks and like capture undocumented workers. So now we have what? No food pick. Like, it makes no sense what they're doing. They're just making it evil, just for the sake of it. It's just, and then they're projecting their might into other sectors of the world to steal their resources. Like, we are humanity. We are not countries, in my mind. Yeah, I mean, the North America is an insane part of this planet. Just the United States sector itself. We actually have the most oil reserves. We have the most oil production. We may not have the most oil reserves. There might be a couple of the discoveries, but we have the most oil production in the world. We don't buy oil from places. Like, we sell oil. We have the most oil production. Most people don't think about that. They think about, oh God, you know, these places now have, you know, oh man, those Arabs will, well, you know, they're going to, you know, hold oil against us and hurt us. It's like, no, we make all the oil we could ever use, but they sell that oil to others, and then they get profit off of it. We subsidize our oil. That was a TikTok that I wanted to make, was talking about waste, fraud, and abuse, and about how some people are, you know, we're working on getting rid of those goddamn freeloaders, those 20-year-olds on disability playing Halo, not getting to work. Well, I'm tired of the waste, fraud, and abuse that we got going on, you know, at the gas pumps, because you got people. We subsidize gas and oil companies more than we've ever subsidized any other fucking like sector. Those companies are breaking in profits every year, and we're just giving it to them. We have much cheaper oil prices in America because we subsidize it. So those subsidizes should be capped. Your first few gallons, whatever, are priced regularly. But once you get over, like, when you use over 1,000 kilowatts of electricity, you pay a different rate. Pay a different rate once you get over a certain amount, right? All these damn companies using up all of our federally subsidized oil dollars to make themselves rich. They're driving on our dollars, being wasteful in our dollars. Waste, fraud, and abuse. Waste, fraud, and abuse. Save that money. Don't give money to fucking Chevron and BP and I forget some of the other head companies, but I don't know what 3SOM is. I don't know what that is, but that's a YouTube comment. 3SOOM win space ? From an account labeled GM98E. They said 3 oil companies soon from 7. That's kind of concerning more than less. Who said that? Did I say that? Did the video say that? The video didn't say that.
AU's annual budget would amount to about a third of the total. In the months leading up to his death, he would also announce more specific plans for the creation of an African dinar, which would be a new currency backed by gold, which he reckoned could mount a serious challenge to the dominance of the US dollar and the European Union's euro. But while Gaddafi's Pan-African exploits and popular domestic policies would win him the praise and adoration of many, his authoritarian style and his international adventurism would see him make a long list of enemies at home and abroad. Domestic critics.
Let's see. It could be. Well, it's 5 or 6 or 7 large publicly traded oil investors: Exxon, Shell, Total Energies, Chevron, and BP. That's 5, but I guess there's 2 more. The Seven Sisters, or Anglo-Persian Oil Company. I guess also another Iranian one, the Consortium of Iran. Big Oil previously referred to the 7 oil companies which formed the Consortium of Iran. Oh, I see. That's the other ones. And I just Googled 3 oil companies from 7 to see if I'm seeing any articles on going down to 3 oil companies. The fuck? This article is from 1978. September 11th. Wow. 1978. From Time Magazine. Oh my. Well, that's, completely useless to look at modern day.
Of the regime would be routinely subjected to brutal punishments, and allegations of summary executions, disappearances, and massacres would be widespread. One of such incidents would be the 1996 Abu Salim prison massacre, in which an estimated 1,200 prisoners would be reportedly murdered with impunity by Libyan.
All sectors of American business have fallen down to 3 companies. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different, I've heard a lot of different, maybe not exaggerations, but just a lot of like, oh, we're just like 10 companies in a trench coat or whatever instead of a thing. But yeah, food for sure. There's definitely only a few major food companies, and they're all owned each other, even though there's like, 15 different brand names. They're all actually owned and subsidiaries of each other. Like if you look up who owned what General Mills and Kellogg's, like they all have a bunch of sub brands underneath them that you might think are competitors, but they're not. Pepsi owns Mountain Dew. They're not different. They're the same, like all kinds of stuff. Yum Brands owns KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, and Pepsi. Or Yum is a subsidiary of Pepsi. Like, it's all kinds of different like breakdowns like that. Yeah, illusion of choice for sure.
Security operatives. Gaddafi's Pan-African ambitions would also see him butt heads with a number of African leaders who would grow suspicious of his aggressively expansionist foreign policies. The 1970s would see Gaddafi's government involved in a violent territorial dispute with the neighboring Republic of Chad over the Al Zoo Strip following Libya's occupation of the territory in 1973. This dispute would eventually lead to a series of Libyan invasions into Chad, which would only be stopped after the US and France deployed troops in support of the Chadian president in the so-called Toyota War. In 1977, Gaddafi's forces would also engage in a...
That's awesome. When I was looking up which videos to watch for this, I saw some stuff on the Toyota War, specifically. I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be related or not, but I guess it makes sense that it would be. I wish this video kind of would go into who was the one controlling that stuff. And then something you heard about, the barrels of oil reduced by a lot. My point is
a short border war with Egypt, known today as the 4-Day War. This conflict would be allegedly due to Egyptian President Anwar Sadat's refusal to commit to greater political union with Libya in the aftermath of the Yom Kippur War of 1973. This short but deadly conflict would be the climax of a long-standing shadowboxing match between the two men, which would begin with Gaddafi allegedly sponsoring dissidents and assassination plots aimed at bringing down Sadat's regime, and Sadat doing the same to Gaddafi in response. Just days after the 1980 Liberian coup d'etat, which overthrew the government of William Tolbert, Gaddafi would defy the US government by being the first African leader to recognize the government of the successful coup plotter, Samuel Doe. But despite their initially...
You mean like there's not a lot of oil left in the world to collect? Is that what you mean by we don't have a lot of time left to collect oil? Yeah, I guess I can show it so that way Goat can see it too.
cordial relationship, relations between the two men would eventually wane as Samuel Doe would stand in opposition to Gaddafi's Pan-African ambitions. In a 1983 interview, Doe will be quoted as saying, "Gaddafi is a man who, I think, would like to lead the whole continent of Africa, which is impossible to do." Samuel Doe would then go on to accuse Gaddafi of working to destabilize his government by financing opposition groups in Liberia. And sure enough, later investigations would show that one of the major beneficiaries of Gaddafi's generosity...
So I guess I wonder the premise of these individuals and where they, you know, what their reasoning is. We have not been collecting oil for thousands of years. We don't have a long history of gathering, and it seems to be shortening rather fast. I've heard that we do have, like, there's, I mean, I'm not an oil expert by any means, obviously. I'm just some guy in his living room at what is my 5 a.m. I've heard that we have many years left of oil, but we don't want to use oil permanently because it's going to, like, fucking climate change, kill us all or whatever. But, like, there is still oil to be used, and we will hopefully, we will never use it all, because if we did, we would be dead from just, like, killing ourselves with it. I mean, I want us to get off and get on. I mean, literally the amount, I don't know if you've ever seen this is an insane thing that makes me pissed that America sucks at all this shit, and we have clean coal as our decision instead. China breaks more records with surge in solar and wind power. Between January and May of this year, China has added 198 gigawatts of solar and 46 gigawatts of wind, enough to generate as much electricity as Indonesia or Turkey. China's installations of wind and solar in May, just May alone, are enough to generate as much electricity as Poland. As the world's second biggest economy breaks further records, they have to build up infrastructure. In just like a 5-month period, they built more electricity. In just 1 month, they built more electricity than Poland can produce. It's insane. That's what we get from other countries to preserve our own. It's like a whole market thing about selling shit. It's weird. Like we pump oil here, but we sell it to other countries because we make more of it. It's weird. You think that we just use it ourselves, but instead we buy oil too. I mean, the way it all works is a whole setup, gigantic petrodollar economy, whatever it is. It's kind of nuts. And it does take a long time to reproduce, that's for sure. Yeah, it definitely does not renew, which is why oil is not a renewable.
Was Charles Taylor's national patriotic...
But just seeing that these things, this is on top of what they've already had, and they're going to keep pumping out more. They were doing something like, where was it? They were producing, China installed 93 gigawatts of solar last month. Almost 100 solar panels every second were going up. In, you know, if you math it out. Fuck. Also, they've developed a very special type of high velocity current line or whatever it is, or high voltage current lines that can take the power from their deserts and bring it into the cities. I forget the type of like high amperage, high voltage lines. There's a certain word for it, but even more than our current infrastructure. Yeah, solar is the new ish for show, man. Yeah, for show. Yeah. Yee. There's lots of things. There's even nuclear, geothermal. There's lots of things that you can do. The dams that China is building to do hydroponic water power, insane. They already have the largest dam, and they're building an even larger dam already. The Three Gorges Dam, yeah. The Three Gorges Dam is the largest dam in the world. Produces an insane amount of electricity, and they're also working on an even bigger one. Let's see. The dam produces nearly 112 watts TW. I don't even know what the fucking TW, like trillion watt, I guess that would be what it is, in a year, breaking the previous record set by Brazil and Paraguay's dam. Take that, Brazil. And then in after the Three Gorges Dam, China's new dam. China builds BBC. China's authorities have begun constructing what would be the world's largest hydropower dam in Tibetan territory, a project that has spoken concerns from India and Bangladesh. So there's this, oh yeah, it uses this weird bend in the river. I remember reading or watching a video on that through Mike's channel. So they already have the world's largest, and they're already building another one. There's just so many different things out there. So it makes sense. Each biome has different benefits. Like some places, it's very rainy and shady. Like in Florida, it's really bad to use wind because we just don't get very good wind. And when we do get wind, it's a hurricane. I mean, if we actually cared and wanted to do it, we could definitely have done it. But instead, we didn't want to do it. And what have we done now? Joe Biden put a 100% tariff on solar panels. And then, you know, Trump's tariffs on China are obviously only going up. They're not going down, that's for sure. And it's just like, you don't want us? Have you seen the Chinese electric cars that are available? They are like $10,000 and they're like a luxury vehicle. It's crazy. But we're not allowed to import them. We're just not allowed to. It's like illegal on top of the cost. You might be able to get like an importer to do it, but you have to like schedule it and get it all. And it's going to cost you so much to do because you're just outside the system. Like it's gathering from the sun. And at the same time, the propeller system with recycling water. Like solar, I think solar can gather energy faster than it is already. Like, what if we do like solar with water fusion gathering device? That would be an electrical engineer and you know, if you wanted to do some kind of like dam with solar combination or something, that would be, you know, I'm sure there are scientists looking into that or whatever, if that makes sense. Like it's gathering from the sun and at the same time, the propeller system with recycling water. Just sound like two different things put together, but I guess you could. Yeah.
Front, which was one of the two major rebel groups that would ultimately bring down Samuel Doe's government. Gaddafi would also be a friend and supporter of the much reviled Ugandan president Idi Amin. As a favor to his friend Idi Amin, Gaddafi would send thousands of troops to fight against Tanzania in the 1978 Uganda-Tanzania War. And when Idi Amin's regime began to crumble, an estimated 600 Libyan soldiers would lose their lives trying to keep it together. And upon...
I mean, I guess like these are definitely dates and things that happened. I just don't know the circumstances. Because like the Ukraine-Russian war is happening. And just saying the war exists and one side was helped. I'm like, well, we everyone generally thinks helping the Ukrainians is just because the Russians are there unjustifiably. Whether or not people want to spend the money on it and the other implications of what they can do, and then using that leverage of drip feeding weapons to them slowly just prolongs it so we can sell weapons to them longer, and then eventually try and get, rare earth mineral rights from them or something. Like there's, nuances to all the layers of it, but even just knowing which side is the just side in a war is kind of an important angle. So there's a lot of context left out. So I'm willing to believe Gaddafi has imperfect things, just like how even China has imperfect things. So I just don't know what's happening here and what's the pros and cons or whatever.
Amin's eventual exile from Uganda, Gaddafi would host him in Libya before his final move to settle in Saudi Arabia. From the late 70s and throughout the 90s, Gaddafi would publicly support a long list of polarizing African politicians, such as Eritrea's Isaias Afwerki, Zimbabwe's Robert Mugabe, Ethiopia's
Are these the guys on his shirt? Is that who these people are?
Haile Mengistu, Sierra Leone's Fode Sanko, and even the infamous Central African Emperor, Jean Bedel Bokassa.
Well, I'm sure after 2020, you were not collecting any more in a large quantity, right? You probably weren't recently getting a lot more.
Gaddafi's provision of military and financial support to various subversionary movements would see him raise the suspicions of many, and to their shock and horror, he would even be proclaimed the King of Kings of Africa in a 2008 event attended by over 200 traditional African rulers. Although Gaddafi's associate...
I mean, that seems like just kind of like a tongue-in-cheek, who cares, whatever thing. Like, it's just a whatever. They're being like, the Nobel Peace Prize or whatever, I'm guessing. Just a complete outsider going, it seems like a whatever burger.
With many of Africa's most prominent Marmite characters would raise eyebrows around the continent. His eventual downfall would not be brought about by his actions in Africa, but his actions outside of the continent. From
I imagine from the US.
The early years of his regime,
the West.
Various investigations will show Gaddafi to be a major sponsor of a number of militant groups designated as terrorists by Western governments.
That means very little to me, yeah.
In 1975, Gaddafi was alleged to have forwarded $3.5 million to the accounts of Thomas McMahon and other members of the Irish Republican Army.
Okay, IRA based, and I say the state-sponsored terror thing because I know Nelson Mandela at this point in time was considered a terrorist. So technically that definition does not carry a lot of weight because currently Nelson Mandela is considered a hero of the world. So, right. Just in case ICE is watching and they consider this to be a support for terrorism, I'm technically only saying it based off of the definition, sometimes coming in and out. You know what I mean?
A militant group listed as a terrorist organization by the British government.
Yawn.
In 1988,
you know who else is considered the terrorist by the British government? America. You know what I'm saying?
Gaddafi would be accused of ordering the Lockerbie bombing, which would see 270 passengers die on board Pan Am Flight 103 in what would ultimately go down as the deadliest terror attack in British history. Although Gaddafi...
Killing civilians like that doesn't sound good, depending upon the circumstances of this plane, if it especially being just a regular civilian plane.
Never admitted to ordering the attack. The strongman of Tripoli would nevertheless agree to pay compensation to the families of the victims.
I mean, that's nice. You don't normally see that in anything, so. Yeah, I mean, I know that's true. The IRA did, they did do a lot of fighting back on things, right? They did a lot of, their own versions of October 7, basically, which ultimately will have true. No, I get you, but doesn't mean you have to like it. Usually these forces don't have the resources to specifically target military installations like the oppressors do. So Hamas would rather not be firing bathtub rockets. They'd rather be firing the precision munitions to hit the specific Israeli commanders like they do against them. but they don't have those resources, as an example. So I heard about that specifically, about how they would look for, but that was also supposed to be, at least it was told to me, that the necklacing in South Africa was when you would find a person who is a traitor or an informant on the inside trying to dissolve your movement or put it at risk. As an example, they would light the top air around your neck and you would die a pretty bad death that way. Kneecapping is a thing the IRA did, for example, also shared with me, where I guess they just shoot you in the kneecaps. I don't know if they just let you live or they kill you after. I don't know, but it's a very painful place to be hit. That's for sure. Yeah. So usually it's not just random victims, but I suppose capital punishment can be levied upon the innocent sometimes. Messy, lack of oversight in, individual cells. I'm sure there was, problems. I would much rather the revolution get their happiness through their independence and no longer being a colony than them having to fight their way out of it. But the colonizer doesn't want to give it to them. It's a phrase that I heard from somebody where it was, I do not critique the table manners of the starving, where if there was a starving person, immediately, genie snapped and showed up at a beautiful dinner, their elbows would be on the table and they would be eating and slurping because they're starving. And I wouldn't be like, hey, manners, mister. Like, that just doesn't make sense. So when a person is yearning for freedom and all of their actions of peaceful protest and, traditional methods fall silent, and then they are then subjugated continuously with violence, what do you think's going to happen, man? So many powerful leaders over the decades have talked about that exact thing. Riots are the voice of the unheard, et cetera, et cetera.
On the 19th of September 1989, an airliner operated by French airline UTA would be destroyed by a cargo bomb, which would lead to the death of all 170 passengers, 54 of which would be French nationals. The French government would immediately blame Libya for the attack, and 6 Libyan nationals would be declared guilty by the French courts. The Gaddafi International Foundation for Charity Associations.
France has an interesting flight going through these France sure does have a interesting network going on here of their not colonies for sure.
Would subsequently agree to pay a total compensation package of $170 million to the families of the victims. Gaddafi's international exploits would also see him make enemies around the Middle East, and specifically in the state of Israel, thanks to his fully fledged support for the Palestinian cause.
You're just making them fuck. Also, you can't use a website like this. They don't quote properly. Israel is a colonist imperialist phenomenon. True. There's no such thing as an Israeli people. Before 1948, the geography knew no state of Israel. Israel is the result of an invasion of aggression. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree with this. If people who are there want the country to be named the word Israel, but instead still be like a free nation with equal rights for all, that's fine. But yeah, Israel is not a thing that's been there forever. It was Palestine. They don't even use the word Palestine anymore. So no, I get you. No, 100%.
He would be alleged to have been a major sponsor of the perpetrators of the 1972 Munich massacres, in which 11 Israeli athletes would be killed at the Munich Olympics. He would also...
I think I watched a movie on this sort of... I think it was called Munich. And it was about... I don't know. I think it may have been about Israelis fighting back. I don't remember who it was. This is way before my brain was ever turned on for anything. So I'm just like... Just watching, spy shit, bombs in apartments, sex with some kind of spy and like all kinds of stuff. It was like a spy movie, but I had no idea what it was. This is back when I was like working in the movie gallery. Like renting movies, and this movie looked weird, and I thought it'd be cool. I think.
Also allegedly provide over 700 million.
Oh, right. I forgot about the Israel, the Bible. Literally, there's that whole Tucker Carlson slash what's his name, the Canadian guy from Texas. Not Tom Hanks. What am my brain thinking like that? I gotta. The gross dude. Everyone hates him. He's a Zodiac killer meme. Ted Cruz. Tom Hanks, Ted Cruz. The T, I guess. Yeah. He was saying it's somewhere in Israel. And then they're like, where do you mean Israel? Where in the Bible? Like, I don't know. It's somewhere. And he's like, oh, it's exactly this verse. But that, or maybe I'm getting that mixed up with something else. But yeah, because it's like, you think Israel in the Bible is supposed to be everybody that's there right now? I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Dollars to pro-Palestinian military groups residing in Lebanon, which would lead Lebanese authorities to issue an international arrest warrant against him in 2008.
Wait, who did this?
Which would lead Lebanese authorities to issue an international arrest warrant against him in 2008.
That's crazy.
With an ever-growing list of domestic and international enemies, the Arab Spring of the early 2010s would ultimately set the scene for the demise of the brother leader as a series of anti-government protests began to spread throughout the Arab world. You see,
I wonder if these things were like CIA operative like cells and shit. Whenever I see this stuff, like when I heard about the different things happening in South America with there was that one guy like fleeing not Duterte like it was like Mulego or Juan Guaido, the Guaido thing. Guaido versus Eduardo Maduro. Yeah. When that was happening, I was like, this is weird. I don't know what this is. And then immediately a bunch of ghouls were like, we now recognize Juan Valdez. And it's like, and I'm just like, versus Maduro, and Maduro's bad. But I'm like, do I believe them when they say they're bad versus they could still be kind of bad, but not as bad as they say? There's just so much stuff that I'm like, I don't know enough about these things.
While Gaddafi would for many years proclaim the democratic virtues of his Jamahiriya, in reality, pretty much all forms of dissent against the regime would be discouraged and repressed, and all forms of political organization outside of the basic and general people's congresses would be declared illegal. The Jamahiriya's Revolutionary Council,
which sounds like a paranoia from outside influences generally, but could it be just him going bananas even on his own people? I mean, the start of it all was so good, but could have been overambitious and still had disagreements with allies that ended up turning ugly, and he could have gotten paranoid with some small interference to give it potential for him to still have had a darker side, because no human is perfect. Or it could have been totally not his fault and everything was still against him, and they were trying to stop him nonstop with pressure and very little support. And then eventually he would fall as his allies were constantly bought out around him or whatever. You know, like there's lots of different ways I could see this going down. This doesn't have as in-depth of analysis of each individual spoke of the wheel, unfortunately.
Councils would for many years be accused of working to systematically repress dissenting voices through the imposition of draconian punishments and their tight controls on state-owned media. And slowly but surely, a growing coalition of Libyan journalists, political activists, religious scholars, and military groups would emerge as the regime's de facto opposition. On the 15th of February 2011, peaceful anti-government protests would be met with violent oppression by Libya's internal security.
Like traditional, like Gaddafi, like there's no reason to hurt your actual citizens, and finding another leader that would still have your morals, but staying in because you think that you're the only one that can do it. And, I could see how a person could be, with very little help and lots of enemies, slowly get a little bit stuck in and not be supported and have problems. But fighting against your own citizens, but are they actually, not CIA or whatever? I mean,
forces.
I'm doing a lot of hemming and hawing because I just don't know. I mean, I have to take it at word value here, which is, this is bad if you fight your own, media and citizens who are protesting, because that's bad. The only reason that you could think that you would want to do that is if you believe them to be installed opposition, which we have CIA documents constantly being declassified and them admitting to doing such things. So it's not like it's a complete conspiracy to believe so. It's a actual conspiracy. It's not a theory. It's a fact. It's a proof.
2 demonstrators will be shot in the city of Baida, and a prominent Libyan human rights lawyer would be arrested in Benghazi, leading to further protests. Doubling down on their strategy, the Libyan security forces would continue to respond to the protests with violence, which would only make matters worse as the commotion would begin to spread to more cities. In response, the UN Security Council would refer the Gaddafi regime to the International Criminal Court, impose an arms embargo and a travel ban, and also freeze the assets of the Gaddafi family as well as other members of his inner circle.
This is one of the things that the ICC or whatever, the different courts have had a long history of only ever going after brown countries. So them turning on Israel was supposed to be a big deal, but we can see how good it's done, unfortunately.
Meanwhile, the Libyan security forces, in full firefighting mode, would continue forcefully attempting to quell an ever-growing movement of anti-Gaddafi agitators in Benghazi and other major Libyan cities. On the 17th of March 2011, France, Lebanon, and the United Kingdom, 3 nations with historic grudges against the brother leader, would escalate the situation by proposing the now infamous UN Security Council Resolution 1973. This resolution would ultimately serve as a legal basis for military intervention in Libya, with the stated aim of protecting the civilian population. NATO forces would then be deployed to enforce the UN resolution.
My man did not get a nuke fast enough, that's for sure.
In a US-led operation under the codename Operation Odyssey Dawn, and under the full view of various Western media outlets, the NATO-led operation would ultimately end in the violent and humiliating death of Muammar Gaddafi on the 20th of October 2011. But while...
Oh my God, what is this? So, how have they done since? I've sort of gotten the hint that it has not gone well.
The UN and NATO claimed that the intervention would bring peace and democracy to Libya. The result would be the exact opposite. In a subsequent interview, ex-US President Barack Obama would describe his government's failure to deal with the aftermath of Gaddafi's death as the worst mistake of his presidency. Indeed, since the fall of Gaddafi, Libya has been completely destabilized, with several rival factions vying for control of the country in a brutal civil war. The leading faction, based in Tripoli, is the Government of National Accord, which is endorsed by the UN and backed by most Western countries, while the rival Tobruk administration has the support of Russia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, France, and Jordan. The militant group ISIS has also gained a stronghold in Libya, adding even more chaos to an already perilous political terrain.
ISIS is supported by Israel.
The political instability and fight for control over the country's rich oil deposits has also made Libya a hotspot for human trafficking and illegal migration. According to the UN, over 200,000 people have been internally displaced and over 1.3 million are now in need of humanitarian assistance. with an estimated number of casualties since 2011 ranging from 2.5 to 25,000 deaths. The very same nation, which thanks to its immense oil wealth and relatively small population, had once enjoyed one of the highest standards of living in Africa, has now been reduced to a hotbed of fighting, medical shortages, power outages, kidnappings, and forced labor. While Gaddafi's regime may be rightly denounced for its support of terrorist activities and repression of dissenting voices, it is hard not to sympathize with the growing number of commentators who continue to insist that all things considered, the region was probably better off with him than without him.
Well, he wouldn't live forever, so...
Looking to the future, one can only hope and pray that the Libyan people manage to bring an end to the current conflict on their own terms and begin the long walk towards stability and reconciliation. Once again, it's KB Taiwo for New Africa. If you've enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, then...
It was a decent video. I mean, I'm not going to fault somebody for not having an incredibly in-depth look at the nuances of like 75 different fringe groups and all these different things. And information's not always available to individual, you know, all that kind of shit. So like, I got no ill will. This video was obviously considerably more friendly to the voices of the Africans than the fucking Task and Purpose video, which was immediately stomach churning. So I feel like I learned a lot. I guess my new default position is it was definitely started under the correct circumstances or the correct vision, and had literally the ideas about Arab states and also Pan-African states, both two visions that would be incredibly opposed by the worst powers ever combined. So the later years trying to do those two different things, amassing many enemies and then being besmirched and disinformationed and then eventually killed for it. And then what came after, immediately nothing but instability and pain, which means those people were only interested in ending him, not interested in actually doing a good thing for anybody. So that's my understanding, but I assume without further knowledge that like the political dissents and then the jailings or whatever, we could definitely be considered a bad thing without knowing that those things were actually like spies or whatever. But I have to assume that there was a certain level, but it's not due to any goodwill from the other nations constantly with daggers out trying to stop them. So mad that they lost 49% of the oil funds that they did not deserve in the first place. All right. Like I said before, I need to make sure I'm ready to do this thing in like 6 hours. So I want to get a nap in so that way I'm not like falling asleep during the meeting, because I need to be like alert and good. I'll probably bring my small camera to see if they want me to record some stuff. Just a little stealth recording in comparison to my usual gear. I need to wash my hair because it's just, you can just see the grease built into it, man. Yeah. We'll be back. I'm not gonna like live stream like the city council meeting. That could be a thing we do eventually. I think it'd be kind of cool to do more of my IRL live stream stuff, just because I want it to be one of my things. You still have so much sorting to do. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, I can raid you into somebody, even though it's only 2 people. I mean, I'm sure you got somebody on Twitch you can watch, right? It's a little earlier than what I normally have. And this guy's just watching TV shows and stuff late at night. There's not usually any other streamers on. This is usually my bread and butter, right? That's supposed to be my niche, is being around super late and hopefully gobbling up all the other early enders. Not sure if that's gonna happen one day, but I made a let me see if I have it. No, that's just the plankton video. Wait, I wanted to show you this. Because you're here, right? You're still here?
Push me down, you heathen!
This is from Worthy Kids, one of my favorite channels. I just turned it on the other day. If you're still here, it's a good one. It's called Palpatine's Journey.
Push me down, you heathen! Vader, are we good? Is this a bit you're doing? Vader! In peace, may you rest. That is this. No, dead you are. Yoda, you old sponge. You look terrible. Dead I am, okay? I know. Dead? I would like you to be as well. I can't die, Yoda. Why not? Come closer. Death is a concept invented by the Jedi. What? I don't even know how to spell it. No, I know. Look, I was kidding. Just let me lie here for a moment. I will use the Force to heal my broken body. Take a while, that will. You be quiet. Whoa. That was a lot of hard work. A chair. It's perfectly sized for my little body. I'm just going to take a little nap. Oh no!
It's just one of the many videos under the Worthy Kids stuff. I love their things. The Pepe Sylvia one, I think, is what made them go viral.
They're on to me, dude. Those guys are sharp as nails up there. You can't put anything past them. Oh my God, dude, I'm freaking out. I am so stressed out. I feel like I'm having a panic attack.
You want to talk about stress? You want to talk about stress? Okay? I've stumbled onto a major company conspiracy, Mac. How about that for stress?
What the hell are you talking about?
This company is being bled like a stuck pig, Mac, and I got a paper trail to prove it. Check this out. Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay? Pepe Sylvia. This name keeps coming up over and over again. Every day, Pepe's mail's getting sent back to me. Pepe Sylvia, Pepe Sylvia. I look in the mail. Well, this whole box is Pepe Sylvia. So I say to myself, I gotta find this guy. I gotta go up to his office. I gotta put his mail in the guy's goddamn hands. Otherwise, he's never gonna get it. He's gonna keep coming back down here. So I go up to Pepe's office, and what do I find out, Mac? What do I find out? There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided, oh, shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper. There's no Pepe Sylvia. You gotta be kidding me. I got boxes full of Pepe.
And then he made his own thing with the, I really like the Witches on Tinder one. That was great. He's also done a lot of these, like, Franken Bass style animations.
Ghost. How's it coming,
all made
Hattie?
in Blender.
Not very good. I can't get my head to appear in the hat box.
That could be an issue. You know, the guests are on their way, Hattie.
Don't.
So, an amazing artist, and then they made their own thing called Big Top Burger, which literally one of my favorite things. They're all very short episodes. I saw a new one come out. I thought it was the newest. I thought it was like I had right where I left off, but there was like a whole season of shit I didn't see. And then I find out that the episodes I was watching was like 5 years ago. So, Worthy Kids, if you've never seen their stuff, they got a lot of really sweet, beautiful animations. They're an awesome channel. But anyway, I gotta, wind down, take a nap, and be ready to vamos whenever we're gonna meet up sometime around like 12 something, and I gotta figure out exactly how far away it is, and blah 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 blah. So, I'm getting something done off my list tomorrow, something really cool. So make sure everyone else gets something done. I'll report back on how it goes, and then yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I can't wait to, have another long night tomorrow. So, free Palestine, get your stuff done, and bye-bye.